to order. First, I need to have a motion on public comment time limitations. The ARB needs to determine how long each member of the public will be able to speak during the public comment periods. The public will be allowed to comment after any consent agenda items and after each action item, as is standard ARB practice.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Dan.
I move that each member of the public have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, there's a motion. Second, Mr. Kalinsky. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Notification that the meeting is being recorded. This meeting is being recorded and the recording will be posted online within 10 days. As a standard ARB practice, we will read the statement of purpose and intent of historic overlay districts, and Ms. Mangum has graciously agreed to read this evening.
Thank you. Historic overlay districts are created for the purpose of promoting the general welfare, education, economic prosperity, and recreational pleasure of the public through the perpetuation of those general areas or individual structures and premises that have been officially designated by the Board of Supervisors as having historical, cultural, architectural, or archaeological significance. Regulations within such districts are intended to protect against destruction of or encroachment upon such areas, structures, and premises, to encourage uses which will lead to their continuance, conservation, and improvement in a manner appropriate to the preservation of the cultural, social, economic, political, architectural, or archaeological heritage of the county. To prevent creation of environmental influences adverse to such purposes, and to assure that new structures and uses within such districts will be in keeping with the character to be preserved.
Thank you. Next, I need to have the agenda approved. If everyone has reviewed the agenda and if anyone would make a motion, I'd appreciate it.
Chairman,
Mr. Dan.
I move that the ARB approve the agenda for February 13th, 2025, the ARB meeting.
All right, is there a second? Mr. Kalinsky, I saw you first. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. We have an agenda. I'm going to ask all applicants to please limit project presentations to 8 minutes for a first submission and 3 minutes for a resubmission. I am going to try to be strict about those time limits just because we have a heavy agenda tonight. And so if anyone's here for a resubmission, I'd ask you please to focus on what's different or has changed from your last presentation. That brings us into our consent calendar action items, of which we have one. ARB-25- or I'm sorry, before I do that, Denise, do you have any guests to introduce?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right, that brings us into our consent calendar action items. ARB-25-CTV-01, 13830 Route 29 sign, Pro V Testing Center sign project located at 13830 Route 29 in Centerville, Centerville HOD. The building is non-contributing to the historic district. The application has been reviewed by the sign permitting section, and the applicant is proposing to install one illuminated wall sign. Is Mr. Brent with us?
Yes.
Mr. Brent, how are you?
Good. Would you like me here?
You could go up to the, you could,
Sorry.
you go up to the podium. You don't have to do a presentation. I'll just have you up there just in case any members of the ARB have any questions for you. But before I ask members, is there anyone on the public who wishes to comment on this item? Not seeing anybody. Do any of my ARB members have any comments about this item? And if not, I would accept a motion. Mr. Dane.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB approve consent item ARB 25 CTV-01 located at 13830 Route 29, Centerville, tax map 0544010028A in the Centerville Historic Overlay District for the proposed sign installation as submitted and presented at the February 13th, 2025 ARB meeting. On review of the materials, proposal is found to meet the requirements of zoning ordinance 3101 Historic Overlay District.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Burns, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Mr. Brent, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
We will now move into our items for action. Before we take up the first one, Mr. Burns, do you have a disclosure you need to make?
Yes. In 2020, early 2022, upon the implementation of the Howland Hills Historic Overlay District, the Office of the County Attorney instructed that I had to read this disclosure statement before anything came before the ARB from the Howland Hills HOD. And I've been doing that since that time. And recently they've changed their mind and said it's now voluntary. But I still think it's in the best interest of transparency that I continue to let people know that I live in Holland Hills, one of the historic overlay districts. So, all right, John Burns, under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3112B1 and 2.2-3115H, declare my personal interest in transactions brought before the Architectural Review Board involving Holland Hills HOD, and specifically state the following from February 13, 2025 ARB meeting. Action items ARB 25 HOL 02, 2205 Glasgow Road rooftop solar panels and wall mounted battery addition, and ARB 25 HOL 03, 2107 Popkins Lane 2 additions, and workshop item ARB 25 HOL 04 WS 7200 Rebecca Drive, multiple additions, including a carport, stone patio, wood decks, pedestrian paths, and new garden plantings, involve the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District. The nature of my personal interest is that I own and reside in a home that is valued at over $5,000, that is located in the Holland Hills HOD. I am a member of a group of 3 or more persons who are members of which are affected by the transactions, and I am able to participate in the transactions fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. That brings us into our items for action. Our first item is ARB 25-HOL-02, 2205 Glasgow Solar. The applicant is proposing the addition of solar panels to the rear roof and storage battery to the rear of their home, and David Coker represents the application. Mr. Coker. Good evening, sir. How are you? Good evening.
David is having trouble breathing tonight, so if he loses his voice, I'm
Yeah.
going to.
I can start.
Okay.
Right, no problem at all. Do whatever works best. And the floor is yours when you're ready.
Let me start because I'm in danger of going on and on about solar panels and batteries, but no proselytizing tonight. So, okay, so we were here 2 sessions ago for the workshop. And so many of you remember, and maybe some of you don't quite remember, but the overview of it is that we're asking about solar panels on the roof and a house battery and other paraphernalia on the side of the house. And the solar panels roof is peaked in the middle. So the part of the roof that faces Glasgow Road has no solar panels on it. So all the solar panels are on the back. So you can't see them from the road. That's probably the major thing to know. Okay. Last time, what we missed was drawing the elevations of the power wall on the back of the house and all the conduits and stuff. And on the side of the house, whatever boxes go there in the conduits. So we had our contractor come back and draw all those pieces for us. So we could flip through this. Okay, so this is where the back wall, power wall will be. So it should be sort of right above that plant. So the next panel, next. This is a view of that same wall and the other wall. So these are the 2 walls we'll be talking about, where the different things are going to go. Okay, so next slide. The view from Popkins.
Do all the photos and go through.
Okay, so we can just focus this. This is the back. That's right. There's a shed blocking the view from the neighbor right behind us. So they can't see they won't be able to see the battery. But okay, next. This is their house behind us. It turns out she's selling her house, so she didn't care whether we were over there.
It doesn't hurt.
And this is the view from our neighbor as you look out on the left. And so their house is forward of ours, so they can't see the back roof at all. But we thought we'd give you a photo so you can see what they can't see. This is from the street. So you can barely see the front of the roof even, but definitely can't see the back. This again from the street. but you can see the side of the house. So we're going to show you what that elevation looks like.
Okay.
It'll be the side of the house.
Started at the end. Need to go all the way back to the beginning is where
Let's
the
go slides at the very beginning.
should be some.
Follow you.
There you go.
Here we go. Good timing, actually. Okay, so this is a drawing of
There's,
it'd be raised.
to bring the,
Where the slide was?
no, there's a, yeah, there we, Moment.
It shows up for a second and then jumps right to a close-up.
there.
Seen. Huh. How about that? No.
Okay, well, this is,
That's all right.
Yeah, we,
That's okay. We got
I
it.
think we have it in our packet.
Got it.
Want to describe it?
okay, yeah.
I'll try to take it on full screen.
If we take it on full screen, we might be able to show,
Yeah, okay. So I can go back and forth too if,
this is, that's the second one. I think you need to,
Okay, this is the side of the house. This is the, this one over here, this box is the gateway panel. So this is some of the conduits that are in. That's the biggest box. There is also a small box to this side in the circuit breaker panel is inside this piece. There's a panel that lifts up. Somebody built it out to sort of conceal it before we moved in. So what you need is a box over here to terminate the power going out of the house. So in other words, if you have a power outage and you utilize your battery, utility does not want power flowing back into the grid they don't know about because it endangers workmen. So you have to have a cutoff that isolates your house from the grid should power fail. This box is the gateway, which controls whether the battery is feeding power into the house or not. Okay, so and that's that's the scale and the size, and the conduits that you see run along the roof and the wires from the solar panels actually are going through a hole in the roof and coming out that hole and going down. So they don't run in the back with the gutters or anything. Okay, next one.
okay, let me go back and see if this works on the other slides. How it's supposed to look like?
Huh? So that's the power wall. Actually, honey, I'm a little out of breath. You want to try and do this? It's looking kind of odd.
The power wall is, the rest of the house is over here, so our back door is here. And this, is a panel that's attached, that's gonna attach directly to the cinder block wall. And the only there's two conduits come down, well, one comes out, the other one goes down. It's 43.5 inches in height. It's 24 wide, and it is 7.5 in 7.6 inches deep. And the color of it is white, and I believe the next thing should be a picture showing one on the side of someone's house. This house is not at all like our house, but I chose it because you could kind of get a sense of the scale because you could tell what the scale was of the other things. So it's plain, it's completely plain. They're proposing to paint the conduits to match our house paint, and we have leftover house paint.
Good, I would have forgotten all about that.
Are there other things you need to know?
I think that's probably good, unless you have anything else.
No, we don't need to take up your time.
Fair enough. All right. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on? Not seeing anybody, I turn to my fellow ARB members with any questions or comments. Anybody? I'm sorry, Mr. Burns.
Yeah, this is happy house for solar panels in Holland Hills in that the primary surface area for installation of this panels faces away from the street into the backyard. And so that's not always the case in Holland Hills, but you are among those fortunate few that can without dramatic intervention in the streetscape. So
Yes, we're very lucky with the elevation as street really takes it out of the view.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would certainly entertain a motion. Mr. Kalinsky.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB approve action item ARB-25-HOL-02 located at 2205 Glasgow Road, Alexandria Tax Map 0933040230, in the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District for the proposed solar panel installation, excuse me, as submitted and presented at the February 13th, 2025 ARB meeting. Upon review of the materials, this proposal is found to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance 3101 Historic Overlay Districts.
Is there a second? Mr. Daniel got in there. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. That brings us to our second item on up for action ARB-25-HOL-03 2107 Hopkins Additions. Applicant is proposing to construct a new bedroom and family room additions, and Ms. Christine Kelly represents the application. Ms. Kelly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. May I have the next slide, please? Good evening, board members. This is our fourth visit and hopefully our last one. But I'd like to summarize where we started and where we are on the addition for Jen and Tyler's house. And then I'd like to just hand the podium over to Jen for a few comments after I'm finished. Our original design proposed one large addition on the front of the house along here. And we proposed this idea based on concerns about a large tree in the backyard that we were concerned about disrupting the roots. But during our 2 workshops with you, we heard your feedback about fully not wanting us to fully cover the front of the house. And we went back to the drawing board. And during the study period, we also had more discussions with the arborists. We came back to the board last month with this updated plan showing 2 separate additions. So we kept the bedroom addition on the front as it works well with the plan of the house, and we moved the family room addition to the rear of the house. And due to the configuration of the house on the lot sitting at the angle that it does, we had some tight setbacks to work with, but we feel we found a good solution. And we won't have to ask for any special permits with the county. And our arborist assured us that if the addition is 15 feet from the tree, that during the process of building the foundation, we can prune the roots and the tree would stay healthy. May I have the next slide, please? I've added some additional photos to help envision to you where the addition is on the front. This one shows you we do have a gentle slope going down towards the neighbor. The addition will be right here. And we'll retain the existing slope. It won't affect, we won't need to do a retaining wall or any additional grading. And the slide on the left shows where we moved the doorway to under the carport. So we won't be adding or changing the carport roof or making any changes to that, to the chimney or the windows in the family room in the front. Go to the next slide, please. And these are just showing some additional angles of where the front addition will go, as well as we'll be retaining the front family room windows and the brick on the chimney. And then I also have some additional photos of the back to show where we'll be retaining existing brick elevation on this part. And then you can see it on the back on that other slide. And the next slide, please. I've also updated the cover sheet based on feedback at the last meeting. It's updating that we'll be matching the existing siding materials and installing box gutters. And I have the spec for the windows on there as well. And this is the existing plan, the 1,300 square foot house. And the next slide, please. Shows the new front and rear additions. And 2 more slides, please. I'll jump to the elevations of the butterfly. Each of the butterfly roofs we feel works well with the architecture of the community while still leaving the existing low slope gable of the existing house exposed. And you can see where the new, I'm sorry, back one more, the new doorway is tucked in under the carport, so we're not adding or changing the carport roof. Let's see. During our early stages of design, we did meet with Mr. Burns on site and talked about the butterfly roofs, and he suggested lowering the angle of the roof on the front of the house, which so that it's lower than the existing gable of the existing house, which we did. And we feel that we've done our best to address the board's concerns and presented a thoughtful and beautiful, comfortable home for Jen and Tyler, and hope that the board agrees with us. I'd like to hand the podium over to Jen for.
Hi, my name is Jen, and I'm here with my husband Tyler. We live at 2107 Popkins, along with our 2-year-old daughter, my mother, and our dog. This 1,300 square foot house has been great for our family up to this point, but we also have another one on the way. And despite multiple purges of our items, we feel like we definitely need a bit more space to accommodate 5 people in the house, as well as family that often comes and visits, because Amelia is currently the only granddaughter on both sides. So we're very eager to get started on this as soon as possible and hopefully knock it out before the second kid starts crawling around and being more mobile. We really appreciate y'all taking the time for this and for working with us through this process.
Thank you very much. You're good, Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment? Not seeing anyone jumping up and down. I will turn it over to my fellow ARB members for their comments and questions. Mr. Kalinsky and then Ms. Murray.
Okay, well, my concerns were addressed with the entry elevation of the house, the obscuring of the chimney and the manipulating of the carport seemed to be a bit much to me. But it's by not making those changes anymore and just shifting the door over at 4 feet, I think it really helps. And I think after multiple iterations of coming here, that this is developed pretty well, and that I am, in support of it.
Sir, Ms. Murray.
And I think the drop in the elevation of the butterfly roof on the front is also an excellent change, and that has made me comfortable with it now.
Any other members with comments? Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I've spoken against this in multiple occasions, as you're well aware. But I am grateful that you have, and your applicant, your client has changed the front entrance to make the carport a minimal intrusion in the historic character of the very characteristic end wall of the house, and I'm grateful for that. That's an improvement. I still, however, my primary concern is the looming quality of the addition on the downhill side, because in fact, one of your pictures showed that the house next door is almost a story below, and now you're going out and up. And so it will be, my concern is that the new addition will appear to loom over the adjacent neighbor's house. That remains my primary concern with this, but I think that you have substantially addressed all of my other concerns. And so I'm okay with it.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Orr.
I missed the last iteration, but you have really worked hard to address our concerns. And I know that that you had to respond and flex as well. And I appreciate your ability to do that for her, because she's working hard trying to make everybody happy. And it's a difficult place to be, but I think you've done a good job.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would certainly entertain a motion. Mr. Kalinsky.
Mr. Chairman, I move that ARB approve action item ARB Oh, not, sorry. ARB 25 HOL-03 located at 2107 Pumpkins Lane, Alexandria, tax map 0933040095 in the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District for the proposed construction of two new additions as submitted and presented at the February 13, 2025 ARB meeting. Upon review of the materials, the proposal is found to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance 3101 Historic Overlay Districts.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Ms. Mangum seconds that. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Ms. Kelly, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Thanks. Nice job.
Okay,
That's all right.
yeah, right. All right, that moves us into our next action item, which is ARB 25 LKA 04 1606 Chimney House Air Conditioning. The AC unit installation project is located at 1606 Chimney House Road. The applicant is proposing to install an air conditioner, and Vanessa Lazo represents the application. Ms. Lazo? Good evening. How are you?
I'm here with, on behalf of the Board of Planners with the HOA, and the unit owners also here. We're looking at installing, an air conditioning on top of one of the residential units at Lake Anna Preston. I mean, if you have any questions.
Okay, no, I'm all about short and sweet. It's not a problem. All right, are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this application? No. Yes, yes, sir.
I think Vanessa pictures there, but it will be on top of the building. There are other air conditioners and other service equipment, and nothing is visible from the road or the plaza below. And yeah, this wouldn't be visible. I think that's probably the most important issue with it. And we're relying on relay right now, which is terribly unreliable.
Yes, sir. And sir, just so that for purposes of our record, could I have your name?
It's Stuart Cox.
Could you spell that last name?
Yes. CUDABACK-COX.
Thank you, sir. Sir, and could you please state your name for
Good
me?
evening. My name is Wayne Schiffelbein, and I live in a condominium, as does my friend over there. I would just refresh the memory of the people on the board. This is 132 unit condominium, residential units. And this is the first one that has sought to have its own air conditioning system. And I beg to differ with the one witness. The chilled water system is up and running better than it has been in the last 10 years. And I have every reason to believe it will go on. Its season is limited, May 15th to October 15th. And if somebody has a health issue, you can buy something that sits on the floor for a lot less than this will cost to put it install. But I just caution the board, be very careful. This is the first one. There's 131 other units. It goes everywhere,
Yes, sir.
not to mention energy consumption.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Kevin Lee. I own the commercial unit. I was here last time, and I also own the residential unit, which is on the 1652 Chimney House Road. So we have the same problem with Relax. Is it turn on seasonal, starting only like the May and turn off October. So you know nowadays that the seasonal, that they still have, heat during the certain time of after October or before May. So then like myself and have like older people have, condition with respiration, things like that. So that is decided unbearable. But in the Western Association, the requirement that to be able to change to air conditioning, you have to submit the health condition. Then in order to do that, so let's say that, let's say that the ARB approve it, then we have to go to Western DRB design review board to get approved it. And then the Lake and Covenant Committee approve it. So that with three process. So I just want to give you additional information.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Ms. Laszlo, is there anything you wanted to say based on those comments? Give you a chance.
Directors, I just want to say, I understand where Mr. Schiffelbein is coming from, but he lives in a high rise. We're looking at commercial also, 2-floor. I don't know if you've been to Lake Anne of Reston, but it's a different setup. So there is actually air conditionings already. Residential, there's 2 residential units that have air conditioning. So this is an ongoing situation since last year because of RELAC, and the board was looking at options. Obviously, we are just letting homeowners, and we talked to RA about it, and we are able to go away from RELAC if they want to. So the board is considering it. Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I will open the floor to my fellow board members, Mr. Daniel.
So I've got lots of concerns and questions. So looking at the materials that's sent to us, I really don't have a good grasp of what this would look like. And as a level of parity to other applicants that have come here and brought units or other things on top of these buildings, we've asked for ways to show the view from the street. You tell me it's not visible. I want to believe that that's true, but there's a lot of interesting angles all around Lake Anne. And that's one of my chief concerns is, as was pointed out by one of the gentlemen who commented, once these start appearing, they're going to start creating a new visual feature atop the J building.
Yeah.
And depending on how they're installed, the other gentleman who just spoke when he came last time for a workshop session, we asked for a lot of information about how his units, because they were going to be commercial units, were going to be visible because it would be much larger. So what was in our packet that sent to us was really just some Google Map overheads and some dots on maps that really don't provide.
I did send pictures today. We did send pictures today, but I don't think they were in your package.
Yeah.
Got them up if you want to go through them.
So if those, yeah, I would like to see those obviously as well.
Well, this was sent to us from the vendor to Stuart, who's the unit owner who spoke. Just several options of the angles of where, if you go to the next one, I think that's exactly where it would be located. If you just keep on going through the,
Sorry, where at would it be?
I'm sorry,
I mean, in the water or where? I mean,
obviously there has to be a roof replacement, but besides that, it would be right next in between Stuart. I'm sorry, did he tell you exactly where it's gonna be
You
located?
could go up there and point if it's out for you.
I am gonna go with, it should be right around here, because it was right around the conduit that he had mentioned. And there's just different angles, so you can see. Oh, that's the shaft, from the deli, so I don't think that's a good picture, but
where's that picture taken from? I'm sorry.
that's from the bottom, looking from the back of the condominium, if that makes.
Okay, so are you in a unit from the other building looking onto this building?
Yeah, or is that, I mean, that's
taken from the roof of 16.
okay. Taking from the roof. Okay.
So no one will ever see that
On the J.
unless you're the mechanical guy.
Right.
on the roof. Okay.
If you're looking from the high rise, yes, you can definitely see these top, but otherwise, no, you can't.
Do you have any views from the ground plane looking up at the building?
Is there any?
Like the parking lot or
Any of that?
it doesn't look like it? Mr. Daniels, is that what you're?
Yeah, that's why, I mean, well, I would like to know, one, where it's going to be and if it's going to be mounted on something and installed on something. So that would be really helpful to understand. Is it going straight in through the roof or is it going down one of the downspouts for any of the connective conduit and everything like that? So which one of those?
No, that makes sense. Okay.
Because obviously the more conduit and other materials that go down the side of the Lake Anne building, the more those are creating wonderful visual features.
There would be no conduit going down the side. They would go through the roof quickly into the kitchen. And the unit would sit on top of 4 beams. Laying on top of the roof, so it's not sitting in the water.
Well, that's helpful to know. Again, getting into that, I think the materials here, and I do take thought with the comment made by one of the other gentlemen that recognize that this situation with RELAC, as someone who lives in Reston, that this is a challenge. And obviously I want it to be a fixable one so that we don't have this, but there is the possibility that more people may elect to install these types of units. And similar to what this board's dealt with solar, we want to make sure that whatever we're proposing is a consistent approach so that we're not, allowing one application to go through that has not enough material to make an informed decision, while another one we're being very rigorous with. Particularly, I'm thinking of the commercial project we had last time where we asked for some view shots and things of that nature. The other, the other side of it, I think, is seeing those other visual views and understanding all that and having it in a condensed packet, because if it's not all there, it really makes it makes it difficult for this board to approve something like that. And then the last point about the DRB and the Resident Association, I'll just say those entities, or sorry, the LARCA and the DRB and this board, we are all independent associations. And so I would be very curious as the DRB or LARCA felt about this, if they felt it was an acceptable application, if it's been reviewed already. Are there any views shared on that yet, or?
The board has reviewed it, but we wanted to come to you guys first.
Okay.
Then I also sent it to RA. So I'm working with somebody with RA just to make sure that.
So it's with them all right now.
So I
They
know
have not weighed in on it yet.
together.
Okay. That's yes, sir. I'm done.
Okay, Mr. Plumpy.
Sure. I was just going to say that I agree with Mr. Daniel, and I would like to recommend that the board of the association, right, that's what you are, is to come up with come back to us that, as the gentleman said before, that there's gonna be others of this coming back. So there's a consistent plan. So you do a master plan for where these things will go, or at least give some guidelines. So we won't always have to guess where there's going, so that you can, and as you know, we're visually sensitive to everything. So as Mr. Daniel said, is to show some more pictures of where this is from the ground plane, because that's where, the people on the ground will see this, hopefully not. So I think I was going to suggest maybe it should be deferred soon or something, since we don't have enough items from the applicant to approve, but I'm maybe getting ahead of myself, but I'm just requesting that you do just look at the overall development that you're involved with and say, just take that aerial photograph and say, if anybody wants an air conditioner, I'll put it in this location of the roof because you did a study of visually how it will not be seen from the ground, and the most pleasant view from above too as well. Thank you.
And this is not the first one, so.
I know.
And I see where.
So we're trying to
Yeah.
make it a streamlined process for you in the future, I think.
Well, before we talk about deferral or anything, I want to make sure, see if anyone else, yes, Miss Wong, go ahead if you had a comment.
Okay.
And then I'll get Mr. Burns after that.
Trying to understand all the community around the lake, and you has been mentioned you are represent from a board. Which board you represent?
Board of Directors, the HOA Board of Directors, the Homeowners Association?
LACA?
Yes.
Okay. Get that clear. I do have a second question.
Yeah.
So we have two HVAC application review today.
Yeah.
I'm very confused because now we see a lot of units gonna go on the roof. The application say the address is 1606.
Yeah.
Inside of the content, I see there is a photo calling out number is 1625. And the other one has a number calling out 1608. And I heard from gentleman mention about his property is 1652, but I see the photo in his application is 1625. So I'm a little bit confused which unit get, which house get what.
Oh, okay. 1606 is Mr. Stewart and 1625 he's a resident, and commercial is 1625, which is Kevin Lee who just spoke.
Okay.
Yeah, the other units do not have anything to do with it.
Okay, and 1606 unit is on the third floor, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm clear now.
Okay. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, I think this application lacks adequate information for us to make a a reasonable decision, and I would urge that I would suggest we defer it or ask the applicant if they're willing to defer and submit a more complete application with adequate information.
Any other comments or questions?
I would also second
Yes.
Mr. Plumpy's suggestion that it might be a good idea for LARCA to develop a standard response, because I assume these units all have the kitchens in the same locale and this, that, and the other thing, and that, given this roof footprint, this is locations where we believe it's best to put these things and stuff like that, because that will save time for you, for the resident association, for the homeowners, and for us. If there are a consensus on where these things might be installed in the future. Doing them piecemeal is pretty inefficient.
So, yes, Mr. Dan.
Yeah, and I want to agree with Mr. Plumpy and Mr. Burns that I think deferral, I would not feel comfortable voting to approve this right now. But I think the more there can be a level of consistency for how these are going to come to us, it'll make it a lot easier for any applicant, because I'm not, again, I want to be clear, I'm not in any questioning whether or not the desire for a unit is, valid. There's a whole process for that, but it's more about how we make sure that when we're installing these, it's done consistently.
So Ms. Lazo, you can ask the board to go forward with a vote, although I think you've heard some comments, or we can take a vote to defer if you're okay with that.
Yeah, please defer.
All right. Well, that being the case, I would look for a motion. Mr. Dan.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the ARB defer action item ARB 25 LKA 04 located at 1606 Chimney House Road, Suite 1606, in the Lake Ann Historic Overlay District for the proposed air conditioning unit installation as submitted and presented at the February 13th, 2025 ARB meeting. The motion is defer is due to insufficient material in the application, and the ARB has provided information for what we're seeking for a resubmission.
All right. Is there a second? Mr. Burns, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. It is deferred. Ms. Lazo, you are welcome to come back. So that takes us out of our items for action and moves us into our items for workshop session, of which there are numerous. First up is ARB WK-2025-PR 0007 2951 Chainbridge Road sign. The Oakton UMC sign upgrade project is located at 2951 Chainbridge Road in Oakton. The applicant is proposing modifications to the existing monument sign consisting of internal cabinet upgrade to electronic message display, no structural changes. And sir, I don't have your name on the record, so if you could just state it for the record, I'd appreciate it.
My name is Joe Urshins. I'm the trustees chair at Oakton United Methodist Church.
Thank you, sir. The floor is yours.
All right. We're looking to perform an internal cabinet upgrade to an electronic message display sign. It would be provided by Stewart Signs. Essentially what that involves is we would remove the 5x8 changeable letter sign and insert a brand new static display sign and electronic display sign in place of that changeable letter sign. There'd be no structural changes to the current brick facade that we have. There's two internal cabinets. On the next one, we'll get a picture of that. Teresa from Stewart Signs had spoke with planning and zoning, and they were okay with the project as far as how it was presented to them. You can go to the next one. This is a picture of our current sign. You can see the two cabinets on each. It's kind of in a V shape. There's a 5x8 cabinet with a changeable letter sign on each one. Go to the next. These are a couple of the proposed designs of what it would look like potentially. The top part would be a static display. The bottom part would be an electronic message display sign. Next. This is kind of just an overall dimension view, but the top part of the static display would be 93 by 29 inches. The bottom electronic active area would be 88 by 25, and it'd be separated by a divider. This is the two components that would be just slid in place of the changeable sign. On the back, you can't see it from the road. There'd be a control box that would be mounted to the back of the brick sign. Next. Just electronic signs in the area. There's already some in the area. Unity Church, a couple blocks from the road, already has an electronic sign, so there are some in our area. Last slide. We have some temporary banners that we use. Those would be discontinued use if we were able to get the sign installed. Pretty much all I have.
I think so.
Questions?
Yeah, any members of the board have questions on this? Ms. Martin.
As the person who drove by it on my way here, assuming it's in conformity with the sign ordinance with the county, I think this will be fine. It's sort of out at the corner, but it's in bricks. I like the white better than the orange. But I think this is perfectly acceptable. It's also very commercial around this church.
I agree with Ms. Murray, the location and everything. I mean, I think it's been a while since we've had signage with the LED stuff come in, but I think one of our biggest concerns in most of those cases are that surrounding adjacent properties, that it's going to be creating an inconvenient nuisance. But in this area where it's located, there's a lot of other stuff going on. So that's just my general thoughts.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Burns?
Is the static sign backlit as well?
Yes, it will be backlit. Currently, our whole sign right now is backlit. The top part will be backlit, yes.
Okay. And will the sign be dimmable depending on the ambient light?
Yes, it can be, the electronic message part can be, the brightness of that can be changed. The top part, I believe, is static. I'm not sure on that. I can't answer that question, but I believe currently, right now, it's static. It has fluorescent tubes that are behind it, so that's just the static brightness. But the electronic message part can be changed. The brightness can be changed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. I think I got some feedback.
Thank you, everyone.
We look forward to seeing it in the future.
We will.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, that brings us to our second workshop session, which is ARB-25-LKA-03WS 1625 Washington Plaza Commercial Air Conditioning. It's a LARCA commercial air conditioning project. It's a commercial restaurant that needs to have reliable and consistent air conditioning for their business. And Mr. Lee, yes, please, you have the floor, sir.
Hi, my name is Kelvin Lee. I'm glad to be back here again. I'm the owner of 1625 Washington Plaza. I hope you have the pictures of the additional picture. Yeah. So the last time when I was here, that the board asking question about how the unit been mounted on the roof and how that can be seen from the ground level or not. So we do some kind of mock-up pictures. Right there. Okay, just go back one. So this is the size of, go back one. The boxes.
Yeah.
Forward. The one that show the box. Okay. Yeah, that one. Yeah. This is the outside of the unit, the box. So we use that. Okay, that very close dimension of the 3 units that we're gonna mount it on the roof there. So there's a beam about 10 inches. So we're gonna mount a I-beam across it from this beam to another beam, so we can mount these things on top of it. Yeah. So there's another pictures. So that is the I-beam right there that we're gonna mount it on. Okay, this is the beam dimensions. Okay, from the roof edge is from here to the roof edge over there to the front of the plaza at 20 feet. This is the back, which is the parking lot side, is at another 20 feet. So we mount it basically in the middle of the roof. Okay, another pictures. Oh, this one, there's another picture that we take from the plaza that did not show all the boxes. Yeah. So we have the box mounted up there, but from the plaza. This one is at the service corridor. There is an opening here that where all the cable, TV cable coming in. So we're gonna use the same thing because this one open all the way up to the roof. And we're gonna use that to rain our refrigerant line and electrical line through that. So it's gonna be under the conduit. So then this is for the BX electric line and the other one in refrigerant line, like that. And it will come out on this opening right there. We already have it. So the line, and we just make 3 more coming out of that. Yeah. So this is the picture. We still have those mock-up, unit up there. And we take the picture so you didn't see those boxes from the ground level. And it's the same thing. This is on the Chimney House Road, which is the parking lot over here. So from here, you cannot see it over there. The further you go out, you cannot even see. That's why, yeah. That is where it is from the residential unit. Those are the location where we took the picture to show the mock-up unit. I think it's in the steps. Any other question?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. No, you can stay up there, sir. I'm just, let's, if my fellow board members have any questions or comments. Mr. Daniel.
One, thank you for the graphics. The ingenious idea of setting up the boxes. I think that exactly gets at what I was mentioning earlier about trying to help understand where they're going to be. And then an angle, particularly from inside the J and outside the J, which, I go there all the time for, to eat as well as the market and everything. And I was looking at my phone because I know I've taken pictures various times of that location, but I didn't have one available to me. But I wanted to make sure we were showing and you had that height information because I remember looking at the cut sheets of these that, they're bigger because we're talking about units that are being used for commercial space. So that was my biggest concern was that there's this little top hat. So I think with that in additional contextual information, plus how it's going down the duct, I'm happier with that solution. That's just me, obviously.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Burns.
One of your photographs where it showed where the conduit will come out on the roof showed a big piece of rusty duct there, that one. So what is that duct and is that part of you or is that the unit?
Wood exhaust system of my restaurant.
Okay, so that's excellent. That's already there.
Right.
Okay. That's vent cooking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So then the opening when you saw of the where the cable coming up is right there. Can you go back? Yeah, this cable. Can you go back to the one of the conduit come out? Yeah. Another picture. Right there. Stop right there. There is that opening right here. You see all these cable coming out? That's how they're coming out. So we're going to use the same thing, but we go out this way. Since an opening here, we just drill another, make the opening here a little bit wider so that we can fish out the refrigerant line. Yeah.
Mr. Daniel.
So right off the corner of that picture, that's where the silver hood vent is.
The hood vent there. Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
already there. All right.
Right here. Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Murphy.
did the association, the woman that was here, approve this already?
No, the way that we are that because ARB trump everything, so we want to.
First time for everything.
Fairfax County.
Parents, everything.
So the process is, exactly, so I have to go to the RB
Okay, got it.
and then the condominium association
Okay.
will approve. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe what you're doing now will be the precedent for others, smaller units.
Right.
Basically, sounds like
right.
the center is the way to go.
So based on this, after you approve, then we're gonna submit exactly the same to
Gotcha.
DRB. And then from there, go to the Lake End condominium
You
association.
got to loan out those boxes.
Yeah, save them.
Really, that was a very ingenious solution
Compelling.
to trade them, so.
Oh, okay, thank you very much, yeah.
Mr. Zelman, I had a real quick question. There's a Washington Plaza Church or something like that, whatever, or Reston Plaza Church. On the far,
Yes.
if you go to the aerial that showed where he took their shots, it's one more. Yeah, there. If I was at the front of that church,
Right there, the other church. Yeah.
because those are steps, can I see the roof? Can I see them?
For me,
Can you see the air conditioning units if I'm on
oh,
the
no,
steps?
no way, we go too far. You see how far it is from here to all the way there?
So they're not steps?
Yeah, even on the
Are they
steps.
steps?
There's steps, but,
They're very little, yeah.
Okay, like 4-inch risers or something?
I mean, also there's no windows on that facade, so the church.
No problem. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I don't go there as often as Mr.
Yeah.
Daniel does.
So then,
Your point is, at what point do they become a prominent feature from how far back?
Yes, Mr. Burns.
Further back you get, they may be more visible, but
Right.
tinier in
Yeah.
perspective.
Precisely.
And so it's
Less obtrusive.
it's less intrusive the further back you
all
get.
good. No, thank you for question.
All right, I don't think there's any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for.
We look forward to seeing you in the future as well, sir.
What type of restaurant is your restaurant?
It's a French and Vietnamese cuisine.
Yeah, sounds good. That's very good.
All right, that brings us into our third
Yeah, thank
workshop.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, by the way, so then the process is you're gonna go through the approval, right?
I think you are able to come, I think you're in a good spot to come back with an application.
Okay.
So I agree, everything you brought here, bring it tasty. Let him bring submission.
Your submission packet, and then we can.
I will resubmit again.
Yes, for approval.
Oh, so have to.
This is another workshop. You'll need to come back for approval.
So I'm gonna submit everything like that online?
Yes, I'll get with you after the meeting
Sure.
tomorrow.
Can I, is there a way I can call you?
Yes.
What's your number?
It's that I email
That out.
everything.
We'll go to ARB-25-OR-2WS 90. Input alteration.
Okay.
All right,
Yes,
I got your
very
email. Thank you very much. Thank
Ron,
you.
Liberty Heights project, and the applicant is requesting feedback on building signage, outdoor furniture, and outdoor lighting. Sir, welcome back. You have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Bob Dunning with Dunning Group Architects. I'm here with Jeremy Harden of Sport Rock, and we appreciate you letting us come back a third time. As we turn over rocks, we find more things that we probably need to talk about before we submit a formal application for approval. As you mentioned, each of those items, we actually have one more that we snuck in. In preparing some of the engineering documents, realized that there are some engineering features that are below grade in window wells, some louvers. And we figured we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about those as well. So we added that to our current presentation. So if you don't mind, if you can advance to the first slide. Okay. This again is just for general orientation for the development. Our climbing facility is proposed to be right here. The Lidl is here. Shopping center on this side. We'll call it a public green, and there's some retail buildings around the perimeter. You can go to the next slide. This is the start of some of the signage. And actually, Jeremy, I'm going to ask your help since you work at the signage company.
Yeah, we have 3 options for you guys we'd like to see feedback on. This first one is our favorite, but we'll be happy with all 3 of them. This is our most recent logo addition. We've incorporated the smaller SR that we use as a brand on all of our climbing walls, and that's kind of getting nationwide recognition for Sport Rock, our company. So this is the one we prefer, but we can go to option B and C. This is the same font, logo without the SR. And one other option was just the square option. To me, this one doesn't look as Metropolitan.
Right?
We went
The consensus on number one. And discussion.
And this is also
Beautiful.
an element to show you guys the gooseneck lighting. That's Bob's word standard, or that's what the developer is.
It is one of the standards of development.
Okay.
So that's what the rest of the retail establishments are using. It will not be a cabinet illuminated light. It'll be illuminated by these gooseneck lights.
Okay.
Good. So option A.
Take option A.
All right. We can keep going, and Bob will help me out if I can't keep presenting.
You're good.
So we actually understand that ARB doesn't oversee these signs, but we wanted to show them anyways. Same thing, option A and B. B represents what we match to with option A. Teal letters with the white outline. If you guys had a preference to match.
Say, Denise, aren't these all governed by the
Yes,
sign?
they are, but I think there are some variations in the color.
Yeah, no, but
Yes.
okay, just clarify folks who weren't here. So the sign plan that was put together for this kind of established a standard for these.
Yes, it'll be this pylon, and then there's a retail sign, but again, just for feedback.
Yeah.
Preference.
Perfect.
B is what our option would be.
That's good.
I like blue, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, we had started with red, and the board, you guys liked our teal, so we switched
Teal
over
is
to
good.
teal, so we
Teal is
like
good.
that as well. We can go to the next one, this retail signage, same thing. We prefer the teal, although this one looks a little darker, and maybe the white might pop out a little more, but again, keep it all similar. Option B is our preference. Next one. I think I'll have Bob take over.
Well,
here.
actually, it's always gonna know which one of these signs make us look fat. So what we want to do is we're going to read out the things that we don't, this is being silly. So the idea is we wanted to present it to you, so that way we get your input, and together we can find something that we think would better represent the property. So a lot of these things that are not selected will be pulled out. Okay. So again, thank you for your feedback on that. This is just photographs. As we've gone and presented, we've kind of pulled slides out as we more or less have kind of worked through certain issues and elements. So we kept a few of the standard slides in for reference. This is one of them, just to remind us on the back of the building. This is the public green at the back and the building as it currently is. If you go to the next slide. This is from our prior presentation. And in plan view, we're going to have some indoor bouldering areas through here, which would be in the main structure itself. Out on the back, we are proposing to expand the existing concrete patio that is out there to accommodate an outdoor bouldering element. And so this is just meant for more for key plan. If we can go to the next element, or side, sorry. So one of the things we want to talk about, signage is one, lighting is the next one. And so we were experimenting with lights. We talked about either some ground mounted lights, some pole mounted lights, and then we talked about some string lights. As we started to do the analysis and started with the ground mounted lights, we found that was problematic for climbers. It would be blinding them immensely. So we decided to, at this point, to present pole mounted lights. They're going to be tucked up underneath the canopy, and then the string lights are really more for ambiance as we have this. So these are some of these images are representing what we're currently proposing, and we can just advance slowly through. We may come back to some of these things as well for some of the furnishings, which we'll talk about. So if you could just advance this kind of through a couple, this gives you some of the ideas of how the lights would be set up inside. The canopies we're planning on using the four corners to light the boulder element. We were concerned about light pollution. We're also worried about any glare for adjacent properties. So we thought the downward facing lights would maybe better serve the neighborhood and the neighboring buildings. We were worried that it would maybe cast too much shadow below, but it seems like we're getting good light around the boulder. Slide. So these are just more representative images of that.
How is the boulder being lit? Is it from the pole lights also?
Yeah, they're from the pole, so they're
pretty even.
We have it in the four corners, and I brought some of the paperwork, which we'll put into the final submission, which is a photometric study.
Good.
And I'm sorry.
I was going to say, is that a realistic representation of how the boulder being?
It is.
It looks.
I looked
too good.
It looks great. So one of the things I'm always worried about, you put the IES files into the software, you wonder how accurate it really is. So we're kind of relying on the software, but it seems representative. What we have is we're looking for the boulder be lit between 20 and 30-foot candles, because that's what is
Good for
the
climbing.
one that's needed for sport climbing. What we do is we're getting kind of, we'll call them hot spots or brighter illumination areas at the four corners. Those, they have a 65-foot candle illumination in the corners where the origins of lights are. And it kind of is closer to probably, I'd say as it reaches the far points of the boulder, it might be getting down to around 15-foot candles.
That's plenty bright, plenty bright. And then are those string lights you have on?
Those are more just for ambiance. And, you know,
But that's gonna
Yes,
be in your,
yes.
in the application. So that's at the edge of the,
they're just looking along and run along some of the guy wires on the.
okay, gotcha,
canopies.
gotcha. Thank you.
So, good questions. So again, I brought some of the photometrics and things, 'cause I figure when we ultimately submit for approval, it'd be good to include that information.
Then are those string lights changeable colors? That's why they're different
That
colors?
is a great question.
Well, because I see that.
You can generally get those as LED and changeable color. We really prefer just the warm white.
We're thinking like
Thank you.
3,000 Kelvin is what we're
Yeah,
shooting
yeah.
for some of the lighting. It's the warmer light. We didn't want the 5,000.
It's too
It turns
yeah.
kind of blue purple,
Right.
you know. Great questions. Thank you. Okay, next slide, if it's okay. Same, just more representative images. And then back along the area here, we were proposing to take the two closest poles, and actually, you know what, I don't think that they turned the fixtures, you'll see them themselves, they're about 10 by 16 are the fixtures, they're pole mounted, and they put the light source up there, but they didn't show the lights, so you will actually see
There
the
you go.
lights. So we'll make sure that is corrected for the next presentation, but we'll have a couple of lights that are facing back towards the building to light up this patio extension. And again, some of the furniture through here, which we'll go back and talk about as well. Next slide. And then these are representative images just of the pole mounted lights, which these are just LED. What we're planning on using is 300 watt lights that are 3,000 degree Kelvin is the color temperature that we're looking for. And we're playing back and forth depending on how they're angled to get the illumination that we're looking for on the boulder.
My only concern with those, you see those in retrofit parking lot situations?
These are a little bit smaller. They look like.
Well, yeah, but they're extremely bright when you look at them and they blind you. And I was wondering, could you have any, look at that same source with the shroud on it a little bit? Because right now it's just, it's
bright.
They'll be blinding. I mean, I'm be honest with you.
No, and I agree.
I'm a little uncomfortable with it.
We're looking at them. We were also looking at if there's any shields where it could be more or less an indirect, so kind of the light would come off the canopy itself.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Take a look at a manufacturer called Bega, B-E-G-A.
Oh, no, bigger.
Yeah, they're expensive, but they have high quality fixtures. I'm concerned that this is going to be a little too obnoxious. I know you want the light, but I think there's different ways to do it.
Well, we want to continue looking, but
Yeah,
we had a time crunch to get in
No,
here.
that's fine.
So we found a couple of manufacturers that did this, but we like the idea of the shields better for the same reason we didn't like the ground lighting. We're not looking to blind the climbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But think you may want to investigate it.
Vega's good. I actually went and toured their.
In California?
Yeah, California. was a
Some of
great
the
tour.
office people do, yeah.
But
But there's other reps in Baltimore area.
up in Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland.
But yeah, we'll look at that. We are looking to see if we can find better lights. I'm more worried about like the glare.
Yeah.
Is what we're looking at. So, but these were so far the best candidates we've
Okay,
been able.
no problem.
We're still looking.
Keep looking.
Okay. I think this might be, go one more. I think that might be the end of our lights. Yes. So it gets into the patio furniture. Do you mind picking it back up again?
Let's go back to some of those outside images. We can kind of talk about it using the images rather
There
than
you
just
go.
the thing.
That one.
So we're trying to do a little bit more, modern, kind of hip, very durable furniture. Most of our clientele, 20s to 30s, they're not the easiest on things. So all this stuff is, heavy duty polymers or concretes. And again, these are kind of our color schemes, the concretes, the kind of wood tones, and then this teal is like our color. I wanted to put these on the outside of the fence. I also didn't want them walking away. So if you go back one or two, you'll see these multiple picnic style tables. A little harder to walk away with these guys, a little harder to push them up against that fence and then climb over. So
I think if I can make a suggestion
Please.
for that furniture, because we specs this a lot, is look at forms and surfaces are landscape forms. You're going to see some better looking ones that can be bolted down and a little bit more not so institutional. Like, no pun intended, we're in an institution, but something that kind of goes with your other furniture, but not be off the wall chart.
Yeah, we had a couple modern ones, but I didn't find ones that were able to bolt down. I thought instantly they would get tucked up and climbed over.
There is some, but just a little bit more work on that. I think we'll go a long ways.
Okay.
And make sure they're all ADA compliant. Even now, do you have handicapped people in your gym? Well,
they're definitely welcome. It's a little hard for them.
Make sure that some of that furniture is that you have there, because right now they are not. They like the teal stuff and so forth. So be as inclusive as you can.
Absolutely.
When you come to that.
Excellent. No, great.
Denise, so we don't usually have that much oversight on like.
Outdoor furniture, no. I mean, I think they're soliciting feedback.
It's great that you're at, in the end.
I like your feedback.
I would like
to extend their, and I think Mr. Plumpy's feedback is great, particularly about the stuff in the public area.
Yeah, a little nicer, a little more modern.
But I get that you've got a aesthetic you want to go for.
Yeah.
We're definitely also limited on, I think we'd be chased out of town if we started telling people what patio they're for. Patio.
Okay.
We can keep going forward. We just provided a couple cut sheets of this furniture if you guys are interested, but we don't have to spend that time. Basically, it's durable furniture.
That's fine.
Walking through. And I believe I updated the presentation with our final thing that Bob will probably hop back up here and talk about the louvers. Again, all base and
see, that's a different picnic table than your cut sheet as opposed to
the other one.
Section.
Exactly. They didn't. That one was a little harder to get into the.
That one's much better looking than the other one, just FYI.
Oh, if you like this one, that's the one that's going in.
Let's make sure that you have some of these tables ADA compliant, meaning that you're not.
There's a little space for.
Yeah, there'll be like 3 benches versus 4 benches, but your furniture rep will be able to set you straight.
Yes, sir. Furniture rep being myself.
No, Jim, that's selling it. I
Okay.
can help you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, take over. Ron.
You're the thanks, sir. Okay. The last item that I would like to talk about is the VRF system that we have is going to require the introduction of outside air to the building, ventilation air. And actually, there's 3 existing louvers, and I didn't think about it for this. We're going to utilize each of the 3 louvers that are on the front of the building. There will be no change to the outside. One of them is a large exhaust ventilation louver. That's the central one. That's going to remain as is with equipment that's already working with it. There are 2 current louvers that go into the attic on the front of the building that we're going to reuse, but there won't be anything visible to the exterior. But for the basement level, we're going to have our locker rooms and things down there. We need good ventilation air coming in. So what we're trying to find, where do we introduce this air? Currently, it's probably not super visible. There is a grill or a grate system that runs along the patio here. And these are like basement windows that are below that. And it has, oh, thank you. These are like heavy duty security grills. Down below, there are some windows down below. So we're proposing to replace 2 of the windows that occur below that sidewalk level with some louvered openings. Can you advance the next slide? Thank you for your help with that. And so this is just a modeled idea. This is not what the louver looks like at the grill. It was just what we were able to achieve with what we were playing with, but it is a security grill system. And you'll see there's some windows that occur down below. We're again proposing to take to this one and the one in the back and be able to introduce the outside air for our ventilation system. We weren't sure if that was as critical, but we want to make sure that anything on that skin of that building is discussed here before we present for approval.
Any questions or comments on the louvers from anyone on the board? I think it's all right.
Okay, well, this is our time to flush it all out.
3rd month. We're ready for you.
Yes, sir.
Just had a real quick question. At the beginning, you mentioned in this presentation, as well as the last one, that you're increasing the size of the concrete. That's there, right?
In the back, yes.
Yes. Knowing that it's a different kind of concrete, you're going to pour. Are you going? It's impossible to match it because it's aged. So what type of concrete? Is it going to be white, red, pink, blue, whatever?
Our attempt, you're right, it's hard to match aged concrete, UV and everything else to kind of place with the surface. Our intent is to match it.
Okay.
And this will be more of a white concrete to match the existing as best we can.
And that is something we're going to work through.
Yeah, I mean, you can't match it perfectly, but I just
But it's-
asked the question. Okay, thank you.
I think that's everything I had, if there's no questions.
No, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Tennant.
Great job.
Appreciate your.
Can't wait to climb.
You all have a good evening. All right, that brings us to our fourth
Job.
workshop, which is ARB 25 HOL 04 WF 200 Rebecca Drive alterations. The applicant is proposing the addition of a new carport with a green roof above, a stone patio at the first floor side entry for ADA access and parking on a level surface, replacing pressure treated boards on existing stairs and decking with hardwood boards, adding decking on pedestals above an existing concrete pad at the front of the house, adding a deck on footers at the back door of the house, adding pedestrian paths and new garden planting. Ma'am, could you please state your name, and the floor is then yours.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Mila Antubo. I am one of the principals with Moody Graham. We're a landscape architecture firm, and I will be presenting 7200 Rebecca Drive on behalf of our client, Kate Yamashita, who is not here with us tonight. Thank you for your time. So this is a brief project description. You're familiar with the address. I already mentioned the owner. Next slide, please. So this is the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District map and the location of property. I'm regretting I forgot a pointer. An aerial view outlining the house. Next slide, please. Next one. This is we did the existing conditions survey with surveyor, and we got the information of the topography, existing trees, underground utilities. So we know what we're working in terms of existing conditions. Next slide, please. And this is the existing conditions plan that we added on top of the survey. Again, the property has a lot of existing trees. We have met with an arborist to make sure that all the trees are in healthy conditions. There's a big topography change. A current driveway is bringing you up to the home, and in what we're assuming is a more recent renovation, which you will see in some of the pictures. There are like different materials and different levels that were kind of stitched together before selling the property. And there is a deck that comes out on the side here. As you come off the driveway, there are steps leading up to what is currently the main floor. The original main floor was the lower level here, which is still exists. Next slide, please. Sorry. And so these are some of the existing conditions photographs that would make a little bit more sense. So this is the step. These are the steps that I was talking about that lead to the second level above. This is the door that connects to the lower level, and you can see the different stitching of materials and elements, and these are different decks that were added. This is the existing concrete patio, and then we have another kind of like concrete wood walls. So it's currently not accessible, and our client has recently moved in, and her mom is going to live with her. And so creating that accessibility is really critical, and she will be actually living in this unit below. And then this is the deck on the side of the house, and this is looking from the backyard back towards the house. And you can see all the existing trees and great change that is currently happening. Next slide, please. So this is a master plan that the client is hoping to implement in several phases because of limited resources and because of the overall expense of the project. So we're here kind of presenting, but also asking how do we move this forward. So I will describe the master plan, and then I will dive into what is the focus of phase one, and we will discuss what are the elements that are under the ARB purview, and we would appreciate your feedback on how to move it forward. So in terms of overall master plan, some of the big moves that we are proposing is incorporate a carport here and alter the driveway to the current slope of the driveway is around 16%. So by altering the driveway, we're actually minimizing the slope to about 6.5%. And the carport is going to be really helpful for Kate's mom to be able to just park a car here at a leveled surface and then go to her living space underneath. To kind of blend in the carport better with the surroundings, we're proposing green roof on top, which would be on the same level as the landing, the top landing of the steps. So you'd see from, and we'll show you some views, how we think that can look like from the street. In addition to that, we're proposing a pedestrian connection. So if you're walking in the neighborhood, you can, instead of using the driveway, you can just come in here. And to create a unified feel for the home, we're proposing to replace the steps and create all the entry points with wooden deck. And we're looking into either locust or epay as these materials. And then in the back, eventually, this is a future phase, the client is interested in adding a unit in the back, which is going to be like a office in the woods, gym, and small outdoor area to connect with the rest of the garden. And as an even more future phase, adding a plant pool back here. And so that would require some regrading to make it, again, the goal is to make it more accessible so they can enjoy the garden, and we're preserving all the trees and working around the grade and working with an arborist. Any questions about the master plan?
Ambitious master plan.
Yeah.
A lot of things that I think, I mean, I want to focus on what you're proposing right now, but as you start to descend into your master plan, the more I get more anxious about how it can affect the historic overlay district. The addition, the pool, starts to become a complex, not a house in the neighborhood. That's my worry.
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, also, I noticed on that particular drawing, it labels the little building in the back as having a bathroom, living space, and a kitchenette. Essentially makes that an accessory dwelling unit, a freestanding accessory dwelling unit, which is very complicated in the Fairfax County zoning. And so that accessory structures is one thing, but this is an accessory dwelling unit because it has both a bathroom and a kitchen, at least the kitchenette. This non-specific about what exactly is there. And so that's going to require a whole series of approvals, not just from us, but from the zoning authorities and such. So that's a concern.
Okay.
Also share the general concerns that Mr. Daniel expressed on the overall impact of a pretty significant transformation of the landscape.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Actually,
Yes, Mr. Plumpy.
I think your first phase, the carport, green roof, and what you're doing with the steps and the driveway, I think makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. I'm the fellow landscape architect like you are. I think that'll definitely improve the usage of the house. And are you enlisting an architect to show us drawings of what that is going to be?
Carport?
Yes, and anything else you're doing to the house? Because these architects will want to see that, I assume.
Yeah, so we have an initial sketch for the car.
Like the deck, I think they're gonna ask for probably some more hardline type drawings eventually, right? For the deck and for the carport, not just the freehand sketches. And perspectives are nice to show what the design character is going to be, but I think you need to perhaps enlist an architect to help you out in this approval process, because you're doing things to the house, not just the landscape.
Yes, and we have been working
Okay.
with an architect, and will involve structural engineer to make sure that it's
can work.
structurally sound. But before moving into like for more detailed drawings, we wanted to hear your feedback and see if we're in the right direction as mid-century modern style, and any other comments.
Me personally, I have no problem with what you're doing first phase with the carport and so forth, and what's behind the house. I think the auxiliary structure is going to be a challenge, as they've mentioned.
Yeah, and thank you for clarifying this. I personally didn't know the difference between accessory structure and accessory dwelling unit. And this is really kind of still up in the air because it's in the future phase, and it hasn't been, we were looking at products.
Yeah,
basically.
I think you have to look at the zoning to see, number one, if you can do it based upon the size of your lot. I mean, I live in a development that has 3 to 5 acre lots. We can do this, but it's a laborious process. You have to go to the Board of Supervisors for approval and zoning and so forth. So it's not just us. It's quite a few county agencies to go through. And are these well and septic or city?
No, it's city,
Okay, thank you.
county.
Or county, excuse me, county.
So if it doesn't have a bathroom, it would be considered an accessory structure. Is that correct?
You have to talk to the zoning officials, you know.
Bathroom is the key thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that
Oh,
is one.
bedroom and bathroom are the key thing. Bedroom is that's what I understood, because our neighbors, it's right.
You know, I used to live in the city, the District of Columbia, and if you had a stove, it was considered a dwelling unit, right? So I lived in an English basement apartment and went through the code compliance review, and it had a 30-inch gap and had a 220 outlet, but no stoves. But okay,
Go for it.
and I went through, and then they brought the stove in.
So they're, that's so they're, but
So
yeah,
you have to comply with the county's zoning. That's not our purview. That's county.
consult with your architect to talk to the county.
Okay.
And so we're not hearing about the architecture parts tonight. We're just hearing about the landscape parts.
I think
Well,
the carport, right?
I will show the carport.
Okay, all right.
So this is a view of the existing conditions and a sketch of the proposed concept with the carport, the green roof above, and replacing the stairs in kind, basically. And the level, like the level surface below the carport and the outer driveway. Next slide, please. So this is showing a diagram of the master plan and identifying the elements that are under the ARB purview. And so this includes the carport, the stairs, the wooden deck, more steps here, the dwelling unit or accessory structure, TBD to be confirmed, and the pool.
On your car, is the carport roof accessible? Because you have steps that go to a landing. So that if it's not, there'll be a railing
There will be a railing.
to prevent people from going on it.
Right,
Yeah.
like here,
Gotcha.
so that it's not accessible. Next slide, please. So this is showing the phase 1 plan. And so phase 1 includes the carport and the unifying replacement of the wood, so to make it all the same and make it flush so it's accessible. So this is happening on the top, on the second level here, replacing the steps, adding wood here on top of the concrete, replacing the side deck, And this little piece to accommodate the existing driveway access to the carport area. So this is phase 1A, and then phase 1B is kind of like regrading the area here because currently the garden is sloping towards the house, like towards this corner. So just making sure that we're not diverting water towards the house and the grading is working, so it's sloping away from the house.
I think when you come back, you're going to have to show the elevations of all the houses that you have the deck to. You know, like the front elevation and the sides, and
Okay.
even the rear, not so much, but I think it's the ones visible from the street, right? So that they can, because that's going to affect the facade of the house. Because right now it's just a concrete walkway in front of the house where you have the deck, right? It's just a concrete
Yeah, can we-
existing condition.
Existing photo-
Existing conditions is like it's a concrete patio or
Yeah,
something.
so we're not changing.
You're putting a deck on top of it.
Adding pedestal, like the shims with pedestal pavers with the wooden plates.
Okay.
Top.
Oh, okay, so there's not an elevated deck then? Is,
No, no, no.
okay, I'll say it's on
No,
grade.
just- Sorry.
Like bison, like the bison 24-inch squares.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's like really the
Yep.
smallest
So I
profile.
understand. That's no problem. I mean,
So it's not elevated. It's basically the deck that is elevated is the one above.
No, you just sort of back to the right.
Can we go to the existing photographs, please? Yes. Okay, here we go. So it's basically, this is the existing concrete and the pedestal pavers will be right on top of this plank, but will extend. So there is no, this is not happening. There are like different one step. But so we need to show elevations.
I'm sorry, I thought it was an elevated deck. That's my misunderstanding of what you said before, but I think it's really important, the carport, how that is. Show some good drawings of what the carport is.
We're just, right now, we're trying to understand conceptually what you're proposing. Obviously, as Mr. Plumpy said, design drawings and all those types of things will be needed for approval, but we're trying to wrap our heads.
Okay. Okay. So can we go back to what page were we? 10. Okay, so this is the phase 1 portion. So the first phase 1A is what we call it, is the carport and replacing, right now it's pressure treated wood. So replacing that in kind for the most part, except here we're adding wood on top of the concrete.
Question, Steve, how close can that carport be to the property line?
Under ZMOD, it has to respect this current side yard setback. So whatever the zone it's in, it no longer is allowed to go within 5 feet of the property line.
It's R2, so it's 15 feet, I believe.
Because I see a yellow line, it looks like that's probably the 15-foot setback, and then it slices right through the carport.
It's existing.
So this is the property line,
Right.
and this is the setback.
You're in the setback.
And yes, so this part of the carport is
8.5 feet. So it should be able to be within the setback. My understanding. Oh,
if it's up to 8.5 feet, it's considered.
The concern that I had before we get to where the carport sits and all is this is a contributing structure in the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District. And it's a unit house 5B design, which is a 2-story house. And the way that this house is originally conceived, the entrance would have been at that second level in the inset. which is where those stairs go up to now. And the living spaces and all would have been up there. And then downstairs, that would have been the family room, or in the 1950s, the rumpus room with all the glass walls that face onto Glasgow Road. And then behind that would be half space, utility rooms, furnace, and all that sort of stuff behind it. So this house is distinctive in that main entrance is up. And this house also, when it became part of the historic overlay district, all of its historic features were grandfathered in. They were considered part of the historic character of the property. And what you're proposing is tearing down or demolishing a unique, distinctive design feature on the street side of this house. I haven't heard any rationale as to why you think that helps to preserve the historic character of the house. So can you explain how what you're proposing to do preserves that historic character?
So just want to make sure that I'm understanding your comment correctly, because this is not part of the original house.
It's been there as long as I've been in the community, and that's 40 years.
Well, we have.
When does it date from?
We have the original drawings. We have the landscape architect was Dan Kiley, and this is not part of the original house. So
I understand that, but it was grandfathered in as a contributing structure with that feature in place. It's been there for quite a long time. But you're proposing now to destroy a distinguishing feature of the house for the benefit of getting a carport. So you're going to have to explain the rationale for why that is an improvement to the historic character of the property to do this.
well, we are picking up on a historic house designed by Goodman and not the structure that was added later on. So you are looking for an explanation, why are we removing a piece that was added to the historic architecture?
Most of the homes in Holland Hills have additions. You know, they've been added over time. They all have become part of the historic character of the community. This has a very unique addition on its front side that none of your photographs really show how prominent it is from the street. In all the photos that you're showing, it's kind of partially hidden or behind a tree or things like that. But as you come across Beechwood and you turn up Rebecca, it's right there. It's a very prominent feature. And none of that shows in these things. By the way, the ARB approved the recent renovation of this property and changes in that deck on the back corner. And so we often go back and look at our materials that were presented to us before that. Also, this property recently sold. So probably if you go on and real estate listings, it's probably the pictures are still up for when it's sold. So Joe, you can find out what the thing looks like. And that information's there. And you could easily provide that material to us or links to it. So that's we can find out more information that way. But my primary concern is you're making a fundamental change to the visual appearance of this house to the community for at least 40 years. And so I want to understand how that will help preserve the historic character of the house, how it will protect the integrity of the design as it has evolved over time. That's not a question I expect an answer to tonight, clearly. This will regard, you'll need to make some research. You need to find out some more information.
So I understand more, John. So when they did the assessment for the HOD and they did the individual properties, when we looked at this property, that 40-year addition was part of the aspect of this house that we were considering as part of the HOD. So,
yeah.
Okay. That's helpful content because I'm having a hard time navigating the site of this property site with just the pictures that we have here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. These are little vignettes.
Because that is going on what Ms. Burns is saying, that's a prominent feature right there. And understanding, yes, it's added on, but houses evolve over time and grow. So then taking it away after that much time and replacing it with a garage, that's a dramatic shift. And so I agree with him that context about what the rationale is, because I'll say The board rarely is on board with the ideas of removing historic fabric. Ideas of adapting with it or working around it or making additions to it, but not, wholesale removal here.
And then related, you mentioned the access for the parent to a living space off to the side. My recollection from going through the house when it was for sale is that there's like dropped like 4 foot by 8 foot space where you go from walking there and then you go down, and then you go back up to get into the house. Are you going to change the grade there? I mean, how is that going to be accessible with the way it currently is? Yeah, there's the drop right there. You can see how it drops down.
Yeah, so this is kind of what I was talking about. You have, my understanding is that this is put here so it doesn't flood. So you have a curb that you have to go over to go down to then go back up.
Yeah.
So just,
That's meant to be accessible. Are you changing the grade outside?
yes, we're removing the curb and we're addressing the drainage in a different way. So you create a flush condition and you don't cause flooding, but it's accessible.
But again, that's all something that you would need to show us when you come back with architectural designs.
Oh, this is not an architectural modification. It's a modification to the grade outside of the architecture.
Does it need a permit to do that?
Do you need a permit?
No, you don't.
Aren't you going to build a carport, you say?
Well, that.
And you're
yes,
replacing
but
the
not for
stairs that
this.
are right there to the left? You're taking down the shed that's in the left side of that picture?
The carport is gonna end like here. It's gonna align with this facade. We do not have a good picture to describe that, but you can see it in plan. So this modification has nothing to do with the architecture. It's grade, changing the grading. So we'll show that in the grading plan. Can you clarify how differently do you want to show this?
Well,
I don't think there's adequate information for us to be able to assess it based on what you're telling us.
yeah, I guess what I would say is there probably needs to be a determination for what work's going to need a permit so that we know what we have to evaluate and what's part of the project. And there very well may be some work that gets done that doesn't need a permit that might be outside of our purview. But I think we're having little trouble grasping what is going to need that and what's not, at least at this point. I think it does need to be fleshed out a little bit.
I mean, if it comes here to us at this point, though, we're going to comment on it, though. That's
Oh,
fine.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
here in the pictures and things. We're concerned about, what's the drainage, how that's going to slope away if you're going to be making changes there, because also we don't want to send water into the house. So in the end, we're going to want more clarification on that. I think we're trying to unravel this whole design. It's taking a lot. It's a very ambitious, as I said before, plan.
Yeah, I think what might be helpful for us, going forward is to have some more specifics and be more targeted with what's going to be coming up in phase one. And then I think it'll be easier for us to comment on that and determine what we think might have an option for approval and what we might need to see some changes to.
Okay, so basically remove the master plan, forget about the master plan and focus on phase one.
We've seen it though.
Well, I mean, we've seen
for reference.
Mr. Burns,
The master
we've seen the master plan, but I guess, I don't know if I'd say ignore the master plan, but I think certainly focusing on what's going to be in phase one.
Particularly if you're planning in the very near future to come with an application to implement that.
Yeah.
Because obviously with a master plan like that, we could spend a significant amount of time in a workshop going through all the eccentricities about it. But and I'm going to continue to agree with Mr. Burns though. While it's an interesting concept for a garage, if we're removing historic material, I'm typically on the side of, I don't like that concept. I'd rather find a different way to solve that problem to get a garage that isn't taking out something that is considered contributing to the original structure, even though it isn't original, it was added within that time period.
And just to clarify, you're talking about the elevated white
That
beams,
yes,
Yeah.
everything right there.
areas on top of the shed.
Yes, this comes as a surprise to me because
Yeah.
it's not part of the original architecture.
But it's grandfathered, as Mr. Burns said.
Yeah, and,
The historical
yeah,
district.
and I think probably, I know Ms. Murray, Ms. Orr, and myself were the three who were on the committee when we were determining what would be contributing and non-contributing structures for the historic overlay district. And I do know we were evaluating those properties, you know, not necessarily how they were originally constructed, but how they appeared at that time as a part of the historic overlay district. So I do think it's important to think about what these properties looked like once they were deemed contributing structures at the time the historic overlay district was formed.
But at the same time, if you can come up with a really good intellectually solid argument for why it should go,
Sure.
but you just, you know,
But-
it's,
Tell us.
yeah.
Sure. Mr. Polinsky.
It's the whole purpose of the workshop is to sort these things out before you put it in for a final thing. So hopefully this is helping you get there.
Yes, it's very helpful, and that's why we didn't go into more details because we wanted to hear the initial feedback, which I greatly appreciate. I'm having a hard time. It sounds like it's not clear, and it sounds like there's confusion, other than there's a carport and that's the hot spot. But beyond the carport, it sounds like it's not clear what phase one is. And
correct.
the overall feedback is that it's.
Yeah, I think maybe some more specifics when you're talking about some of the decking and replacing some of the padding, like what's that going to look like? What materials are we using? Are we putting a deck on the front? That seems to be a suggestion based on the materials. There may be a deck on the front, on the back. Is that all going to be part of phase one? Are we talking about just a ground patio? Are we talking about a raised deck structure? Yeah, so I think there's a lot of, we'd have feedback depending on what information we got as to what that phase one would include. Yeah.
Sorry, just a quick question, because I wasn't on the board at the time that decisions were made about which houses were contributing and then parts that were contributing. Is there documentation available online? Is it in the design guidelines? What are the contributing elements? to each of the houses?
Definitely, yeah, I can say that having worked on the committee, and I know Ms. Murray and Ms. Orr, feel free to jump in if you disagree with me, but we came up with certain characteristics of the homes that made them contributing. Certainly roof lines were important, windows were important, and there were some other things. And then within the historic overlay district, I know that there is a map that identifies which structures are contributing and which are not contributing.
Okay, but there's not, say, a page on this property that says these are the character defining features of this property.
No, not that I recall.
Okay.
No.
Only to the extent that there's one in the National Register nomination.
But the National Register list of contributing structures isn't consistent with what the
True.
ARB.
Okay.
That is a fact.
List. So it's, there are different jurisdictions and they made different decisions.
No, there's nothing specific to this house.
Okay. I was just thinking that would be very helpful
Yeah.
for her to understand what the board determined was contributing.
Right.
Uh,
The staff went through, Denise, I don't think you.
I was not.
Yeah, okay.
It was Laura.
Laura, the staff went through and they photographed and they visited every single one of these properties.
Okay,
Just like VDHR did that.
right.
Actually, we did it in the community and sent the pictures to VDHR for the
Okay.
National Register listing. And so it's based on the visual evidence that you get,
Okay,
right? And that's primarily in the National Register. All they care about is the view from the street. We care about the 360-degree view, since these are not always in neat orderly rows in relation to the street. And so, the view of these homes from different perspectives is important. And so they rely on the visual data that they gathered as a means of assessing whether or not something's contributing.
I will add that to your point, part of if there was an addition or if there's a future addition, you need to be able to peel that off and see the original house and to feel that original house, that's one of the criteria. So part of her thought was this addition could be taken away and that original house would still look. I understand what you're saying, but I also know that as long as you're keeping that original house intact, the whole thing that Laura was saying was that if an addition is added, it has to be able to be taken off and leave original stuff. And I'm not saying I can't say it well, but
I think it was more about how much of it remained, how much was
Yeah.
obscured by the addition.
And what John and I are actually saying is
That
additions
this
can
is-
also age into being.
Yes.
certificates.
Right.
yes.
Right, and I agree with kind of what everyone's saying. What I recall for those few structures that were considered non-contributing is that the additions were so intermixed with the original structure that it was impossible to kind of find that original design of those additions. So even in these homes where we do have maybe some additions that were in the 70s or the 80s after the original construction in the 50s, those were still incorporated in as a contributing factor. Much like if you could either find the original or those additions were just kind of integrated in. Mr. Dan.
So I think one thing I would suggest is, because there's a lot of information in the plan set, and I think the more we can condense it to focus on the phase one section, because I don't have any feedback to provide on your plant palette, but I know Mr. Plumpy will have feedback to provide on that as a landscape architect.
Great.
On the other hand, the decking concept you're proposing and explaining the risers and how you're trying to create a level field here, particularly on that lower level, I don't have a big issue with that. I think that's rather unobtrusive to what you're proposing down there, and it's going to create a situation that's going to make it more accessible to the homeowner. Then that doesn't bother me. I really think it's untangling this garage section and understanding what the rationale and mindset is there. And my suggestion would be to kind of, it's great to tell us that, hey, there's a large concept plan that's being proposed for this entire site by the owner. They got a lot of big ideas, but kind of, the more we can focus on exactly what you're going to come to us for the application, I think the better for making any future workshop more successful in the long run, just so we don't get in the grass on some of these items. That'd be my suggestion.
Yeah.
Just spitballing. So what if there were a recreation? Because right now where there's panels, so below the white beams, if that lifted up as a door to become the carport or garage, I thought it was more of a carport, it would be open right now. But would there be a way to sort of recreate the look of what that is? Of course, it'd be wider, but to
Turn the building underneath, the structure underneath into the garage.
exactly,
Basically, it's a shed.
right.
So the shed
It's
goes
not
away
wide
and
enough
becomes
now
a
for a
linear
car, but
roof.
also that, the angle of where the car would
I
come.
think it runs problematic with how garages or carports are in Holland Hills. Would be creating, I see where you're going with that. Could you keep that and create a garage-like structure at that level? You potentially. I just wouldn't want to create an actual garage building.
I will just say, I haven't been on this board for a little more than a year, but I know carports in Holland Hills. This is important information for you. Carports in Holland Hills are concerned.
We are aware.
Yeah, and I think we've given a lot of feedback. I do think we could probably spend a lot of time on this, but I think that's feedback for the phase one, and certainly would encourage you to come back and again, be a little bit more targeted toward those phase one portions of the project, and we'll be happy to give you more feedback.
Sounds great. We weren't sure if it makes sense to approve the whole master plan at once or do it phase by phase. So this is great feedback.
Absolutely.
So this means that when the client is ready for phase two, we would come back and do workshop and approval for phase two, then phase three, and so on and so forth. Okay.
I think that makes sense to me.
Okay, that's one thing we were not clear about how to move the project forward. So that is very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep, have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right.
Good job.
All right, that brings us to our fifth workshop, which is ARB-25-WEL 01WS 7931 East Boulevard Drive Public Access Improvements. This project is the Wellington and River Farm Historic Overlay Districts. There's a variety of things seeking ARV approval on this one. It's in the Mount Vernon District. Ma'am, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Taylor from the law firm of Walsh Colucci. I represent the applicant, American Horticultural Society. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the site, River Farm, out in Alexandria, Virginia. We can actually jump to the first slide. So as most of you may recall, we were actually here a year ago, almost to the date on February 8th. And so I don't know if everyone was here, so I'll kind of briefly go through some site information just to refresh your recollection of the event that we're not here, and it has been some time. So hopefully bring everybody up to speed. So we do have representatives from the American Horticultural Society as well as our architect here. So if there are additional questions, we are happy to answer those. So as you can see here in the middle, there's River Farm. It's east of George Washington Memorial Parkway. It is zoned to the R2 and it is designated as the Wellington at River Farm Historic Overlay District, which is why we are here. That happened recently in April of 2021. The site is developed with a number of contributing buildings and structures as well as gardens. The American Horticultural Society purchased the property in 1973 and they own it and operate it today. So if we jump to the next slide, just very briefly by way of background, the site is governed by a special exception that permits the Public Benefit Association. It was most recently amended and approved in 2009, and that continues to govern the property today as mentioned. So if we go to the next slide. When we were here a year ago, we had proposed a number of, or had presented to you all to get feedback on a number of improvements. Since then, the first one that you see crossed out, we are no longer seeking that improvement. However, maybe in a future phase, we'll do that. So we could be back here again on that. But for now, we've taken that off. Part of that was demoing one of the structures on the site. So again, that's off the table. What's left, which we'll talk about tonight, again, just provide additional detail as we've worked with county staff on this, is an ADA accessible trail, improvements to the front entrance gates, integrating ADA accessible public restrooms, as well as making some improvements to what is known as the carriage house. So if we can jump to the next slide, I've circled and also shown in red where those improvements are located. As I had mentioned previously, when we were here, the Virginia General Assembly did appropriate a certain amount of money specifically for the accessibility improvements. And so at this point, these are the ones that AHS has identified. And again, I'll just go through some of these briefly. So this first one we're focusing on, if you go, so this is the trail. Or actually, if we jump to the next slide. And happy to kind of go back through these slides as we kind of go through if there's any specifically that you would like to speak about. So I'm just going to start with the trail. Here you can see the point of the trail is obviously to provide a designated and safe way for all visitors to be able to walk the grounds right now. As you may know, it's just open space, a lot of grass, and so it isn't necessarily easy for people to traverse these very beautiful grounds. The new trail will be comprised primarily of asphalt trail. There'll be some wooden boardwalks, which we'll talk about, with handrails, as well as a stone dust trail. So, and at the bottom, right over here, it ends in what we will be providing a new viewing platform or observation deck. Again, ADA accessible and allow you to see out into the landscape of River Farm, the Potomac River. Because of where this trail is located, we've purposefully located where land is already disturbed. And so there will be no trees that will be taken down in order to integrate this trail. And we will be preserving the character defining features of the surrounding landscape. And actually, if we go back, I apologize. With this, you kind of see these images that are around. So part of this improvement, the applicant will actually be implementing a reforestation plan, and about 20,000 square feet will be new native and non-invasive plantings. And this is part of an ongoing program that they have that they started in 2022 to remove invasive plantings on site. So if we go to the next slide, this just shows some of the locations, which you can see by these sections here, of what this boardwalk example could look like, some precedent images of that. And then if we go to the next slide, I'll also note that there is in this kind of large area here, there's an existing unused tennis court. And so part of this improvement, they'd actually be removing that tennis court. So at the end of the day, they would actually be reducing the amount of impervious that's on the site, which is a great thing. And so there'll be minimal grading for these types of improvements that we're showing. And I'll also note that there is RPA, resource protection area, on the property. And so any of these improvements will be out of RPA. So if we jump to the next slide, and I think our architect will talk a little bit about this, but another part of the improvement, which we'll get into, is the ADA bathrooms, which will be located here. The main house is here. Right now, there's no way for people from the main house to walk safely to the new ADA bathrooms. So we will be integrating a new ADA accessible trail towards that entrance. And then if we jump to the next slide, moving on to one of the next improvement is right now the front entrance gates of this area is, you can see, wooden, and they're deteriorating. And so the applicant is working with the National Park Service. There is an easement on this over this area, but they would like to upgrade and modernize these gates. So we don't have any images of what those gates will finally look like, but there are certain terms within that easement with NPS, with National Park Service. So we'll ensure, we've already started conversations with them, and we'll ensure that whatever ultimately is developed would be in keeping with not only the historic nature of the site, but also the terms of that easement. So if we jump to the next slide, at this point, I'm actually going to turn it over to our architect, and he is going to speak to you all about both the ADA bathrooms as well as that carriage house renovations.
Would the board mind if I sat down? I did something somebody like me shouldn't do, and a storm in my back.
Oh.
Sit here. Right here is fine.
Okay.
The one thing that I don't know is how much you all know about the project.
But this project seems similar to what we were shown last time.
Yeah.
Less demolition.
That part, but in terms
Yeah,
of,
just minus less demolition.
okay. So do you know what we're trying to achieve?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe what we can talk about are really getting into the weeds. Why don't we go right to the elevation? The drawings. Let's go ahead and start here. This is the south garage, which was built sometime between 1938 and 1953. Nobody can put a pin in it, but it looks like to me like it's closer to 1953. The right portion, or the west portion, is currently used as a children's library, and the south portion is right now used as storage. We're going to take that and turn it into public restrooms. So the issues that we have, some of them will be similar to what we're going to do for the carriage house, which we'll talk about next, are first of all, re-roof. The current roof is asphalt shingles. You know, when this was built in 1930, asphalt shingles were pretty popular, so it could have been an original material, but we don't know. So we would also like to look at the possibility of alternate bids to improve the quality, possibly look at synthetic slate or standing seam metal. The next thing probably to talk about are the openings. First of all of the existing windows are steel sash, single glazed. And it's probably not a good idea to use an interior storm on a steel window because of condensation, unless the steel is thermally broken. So what we're proposing is really changing out all the windows. Many of them are rusted, but we really want to improve the energy performance of the building. What we're proposing to use is aluminum clad wood windows. And the next thing is really what size do we make the windows? The current windows right now, as you see in the left-hand corner, are horizontal oriented muntins, or actually the proportion is horizontal. And to me, I see very little colonial revival with horizontal proportions. It's usually vertical. The other thing that we want to do is we want to try to bring everything together. One of the things that the HOD talked about was really bringing it together and respecting the fact that at one point in history, it did want to be a colonial revival. So we're looking at different windows in terms of muntin division. And the next thing to talk about are the garage openings. So the idea that we had is to go ahead and create two walls which emulate garage doors, but they'd be board and batten, so probably more in keeping with colonial revival architecture. The center bay that you see there would be a glass door, wood frame, wood muntins with divided light side lights. One thing that we're also looking at doing on the far left-hand corner, there's the storage area. And the storage area has a covered entry area right now. But if you look at the photographs of the building, the wall that's exposed on the left-hand side of that is the exposed block. So it seems to me that maybe at some point in time, they really wanted to have that enclosed as well. So we're actually moving the door, which matches the doors of the garage. There'll be board and batten with glass lights out towards the front. We have flexibility in terms of really how far back we put it, but we want to have enough space so that we can create both a family toilet room and a spot for storage and for the janitor. I think that's pretty much it, the major issues. The chimney in the back is not really a chimney, it's a flue. And I don't know if it's original, but it is clad in stucco. The stucco boxes around it. At a minimum, it seems to me it would look better if it was just disappeared, which means painting it out with whatever roof material we wind up with. But if it was me, I would go ahead and take it down. Flue is not operational at this point. So do you want to stop here? If there are comments about what we're proposing?
Sure. Any comments or questions from members of the board? Mr. Burns.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, both Mr. Kalinsky and I met with you and the site managers on site and have walked through all this. You call this wanting to be colonial revival. I'm not sure I would characterize it stylistically that way.
It actually is in the HOD book.
That's what they call it.
I wouldn't call it.
Respectfully disagree.
I agree with you.
Folks who wrote that. This is an industrial building, basically. And it was a garage and an office, and it's now a children's library and storage space. And so the reuse proposals, I think, are perfectly fine. Honestly, I don't remember that the individual lights in the windows were horizontal. Do you remember that, Steve?
I actually met in the office. We didn't meet.
Oh, you didn't go on site? Okay.
I've been on site, but it's been a long.
I've been on site multiple times.
All of the windows are what you see in the left-hand corner there.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and take another look at it. Okay. But I think the proposed new uses, I think, are just fine. I don't have any problem with that. I think this is a little bit too near a proposal to put slate on the basically an industrial building.
The only reason to do that, it would not be my first choice would, but the main house has a slate roof.
Right,
But-
right. And I think I remember talking with you then about, yeah, okay, this is not the original house. This is a different period, different material.
But not far away is the tenant, building, which has farm metal, sheet metal.
Right, right, right. And I
So-
think one of the things each of us should do if we get the opportunity, go see this site. Because I think to understand what they're proposing to do and the changes they're proposing to make, you need to walk the site. You need to feet on the ground. This is something I think would be very helpful in this situation because all of this stuff is integrated and you're proposing new uses and new ways of using it as it exists. And then that trail that will kind of wrap around out of sight, but provide a nearly level, very low slope means to get down close to the water is something that is not there right now.
Mhm.
And it's inaccessible in that regard. And so I think that these changes are quite good. But anyway, those are my comments on this building.
So are you suggesting that it wants to be something more utilitarian and less,
I'm just,
colonial revival?
I'm one person. I want everybody to go and see it. I had the luxury of seeing it. I suggest that everybody needs that luxury.
Okay, Mr. Dane.
Yeah, I haven't had the luxury of seeing it in person, unfortunately. 3 and 7-year-old prohibit my ability to travel the county very flexibly.
Young
But there's
parents go there and they
there's a
just.
children's
kids
library.
run wild.
Loose. So maybe I need, so
Children's Library.
I know, I'm realizing as I'm saying it, I need to make a reason to just bring the whole family to see it, but
There you go.
I agree with Mr. Burns in the sense that I would rather it lean into a more industrial utilitarian feel than trying to, like, I'd rather, having worked at U.S. Army Garrison Fort Belvoir just south of here that has colonial revival, and there is a mixture of slate, but also there are some metal roof structures, and there is that kind of like step down level of supportiveness for some of the structures that didn't have that. So I wish there was some type of photographic evidence to show which it was.
Yeah.
That would be my ideal mindset, but I would rather go with a material that's not slate because I feel like it affords it too much.
So how would you feel about the, step down to a corrugated?
I didn't actually, when you said it, I didn't actually necessarily mind that concept, but I think John's point stands that I personally, I want to look at it in context, so I'm hoping I can make that arrangement, but I would see that as being better. The garage door, the fixed doors and that stuff, I think when we saw it last time, I thought this was a great reuse for this building, turned into something, that it, instead of having one use for the library and then a bunch of storage, it was now going to become a fully, supportive structure to the facility. So I'd rather leave the chimney and just, as you said, kind of disappear. And I don't know if I'm on board of taking it down necessarily, but that's me. I don't know if others have other strong opinions or.
I tend to agree with keeping it, in the utilitarian rather than trying to have it match anything else on the campus. I also, though, go strongly back to what can we find in the archival record to try to piece out what it was. And I
I
realize
would imagine the HOD report was pretty extensive.
I am not seeing a whole lot of information on details on the garage, unfortunately, but.
Yeah, there weren't very many pictures of the garage.
Well, and that's why I'm thinking, like, given the site's use and the obviously the esteem that the horticultural society's held, I would hope there'd be, what kind, any pictures or any archives materials that they might have had. And it might be, the answer might be no, because I know that happens sometimes. See head shaking over there, no, we don't got it. So.
Yeah. The historic folks with the HOD did a darn good job of putting together material that I don't think we could have ever found ourselves.
So instead of board and batten, on the carriage house, the garage doors are just tongue and groove boards painted out. Would that be something that you would see as being preferable? They're actually vertical boards. you know, then after that, I mean, the reason that it's that way is it also provides an opportunity to bring some light into the rest of the areas.
And I think in my mind, we're working off lack of information. We only have as much as we've gotten from the HOD report. Then there is more latitude. I just don't want to elevate the property too much so that it kind of like becomes more eye drawing than the main house. That would be my primary concern.
Right. My recommendation is this is a workshop. We should not be prescriptive to what you should or shouldn't do, but we should provide feedback.
Well, I think there's a lot of latitude here. I mean, we're preserving the original form, we're preserving the original exterior masonry. I think things that could be added, adjusted, changed over the years, and the building has gone through a series of changes. I don't think there's anything that is so sacred of what's there now that it couldn't be dressed up a little bit more or kept simple. In other words, the carriage style wall / doors that you have there, I don't think that's too much, you know, just the vertical board would work too. I think you have some flexibility in the design.
I think you said it right. Just keeping it simple. As long as we're keeping it simple, I think you've got a lot of room to work with, you know, their choices.
There's nothing very
Yeah.
complicated about what's presented now.
No, it's not.
I think overall works. So,
Yeah.
you know, all the different levels that we've discussed with the metal roof.
The last thing that I forgot to mention is that we propose skylights for the bathroom areas on the backside. There's very little visibility to the backside. I just wanted to make sure there was no objection to that.
Light on yourself while you're John.
We'll have some artificial light, but naturally, nice.
Mr. Plummer.
Sure. You have this is accessible from the house itself, right? It's you're gonna have a separate.
To be support for the event space, which is right in the back of the house.
Can we go back to the plan view that has the trail connection to the house?
That was that orange walkway.
Yeah, the orange. Yeah, bingo. Knowing that you're gonna use an asphalt trail and so forth for the other trails that go by the river and so forth, any envision of what this surface would be since it's a little bit more refined, since it's.
Well, right now it's coming from it. We haven't talked about it, but right now it's coming from an area that has brick sidewalks.
Okay, do you want to?
So it's
decide it. So
would want to be dressed up.
Yeah.
It also crosses the road and there seems to be a good place for some enhanced pavers or some sort.
Thank you. Yes, I was gonna say that this wants to be different than the trail that you're going to the river. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you so much.
It is intended to be brick, isn't it?
If I may, by the way, I'm Scott Pond. I'm the chairman for American Horticultural Society. Yes, there's brick coming down from the main house. And what our vision is from a landscape architecture standpoint is that we would repeat the brick again once you got across the road.
Yes, sir.
And then we would do a stamped brick going across the road itself. And it's so that you could have some consistency in the coloration or what have you.
Sure. You may want to reconsider the stamp concrete or asphalt. I think there's
And
better
happy
choices.
to-
Yeah,
happy
we
to hear
can
your
talk
opinion
more.
on that.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise, you know, it could just be asphalt. But I think what we need to do is think hard about, you know, identifying, getting from one end to the other end.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the main thing going on here is creating handicapped access.
And then you'll come with a lighting plan or something for that walkway too, because you're open after dusk, right?
Yes,
For
correct.
evening events and so
Yes.
forth. So that'd be good to
We need to add that. to
show that
as
in your
well.
package.
And then whatever we decide to do crossing the driveway, you go back to brick then, going on down to the handicapped accessible restrooms.
Okay, and then I don't know if you have people that are blind to go there too, to smell the flowers and so forth.
Mhm.
Any thoughts about making sure that's more than just ADA compliance, it's for tactical too, for
I have
paying
not thought
people?
about that per se.
Just thinking about it.
Although I think that, you know, as we continue with our landscape design
Sure.
and the different pockets that we have there, we just, by the way, did a 70% native garden against the whole southern
Okay.
wall. There and 68%. But anyway, but I think that somewhere we're gonna be in the future incorporating, I think it's what you would call sensory.
Yeah, like with visually impaired and stuff like that, right?
And
Okay.
we'll make a note of that. I mean, you know, again, if you could do something like that, of course, it'd be seasonal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's a good thought to both have an area like that somewhere on the ground
Okay.
anyway, that's accessible.
No problem.
But thank you for that.
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ellie, nice
Do you
job.
have anything else you wanted to present?
No, I don't think so. We can move on to the second building, the carriage house.
It's good.
There it is. Okay. Let's just start with the garage doors. The flanking doors on either side of the big door is the vertical tongue and groove boards. The at some point in time, the central door was turned into a overhead door. And it's flat panels. We probably think it'd be a lot nicer if it was the vertical board so that there's uniformity to the garage doors. In terms of the roof, really the same as the south garage. You know, right now it is asphalt shingles. You know, that would probably be our base bid, but we would want to see what, and it sounds like there's no real preference for the synthetic slate, so we probably want to see what the metal roof would cost. And even, you know, this is a really nice complex of buildings. The courtyard that forms is really a very nice feeling courtyard. And even if you had a farm level metal panel that's corrugated, which is, you know, in a sense is a utility type of material, I think that would be an upgrade. The asphalt shingles. The windows, what we're looking at is actually all of the windows on the second floor, which is the space that we're renovating in terms of the interior, are called French casement, double, a pair of two casement windows. They're metal. And some of them are in disrepair. Plus, they are insulated glass. So again, this is something that we would like to replace with aluminum cased wood windows. We would also like to put in insulated glass and use a simulated divider line. Now, there are two reconfigurations of space to talk about. If you've taken a look at the plan drawing, it also shows you a section of the building. The section of the building looks what is really our main design problem, which is the fact that space is in an attic space. It right now has knee walls that are 4'4" above the floor. So actually the amount of usable space is limited at 6'8", which is not habitable space according to the code these days. At 6'8", we only have 9'8" in terms of the overall dimension. While this is going to be a multi-use building, the use that we're really designing around is really a support building for the event space. So on the south side, we have the groom's room, and it's pretty basic and it's pretty small. But on the north side, we have the bride and bridesmaid, and that was really pretty difficult to really get to work with the number of people who might be in the space because of the constriction. So because of that, we suggested reconfiguring a link that connects the second floor of this carriage house with the rest of the U-shaped compound. It was built in 1973. It has large panes of uninsulated glass, and it is in horrible disrepair. It's a good place for bugs. So we wanted to reconfigure that space, and that's what you see on the lower, on the right-hand side. And what we see doing is actually something where we think we can get a feeling of the most space possible, which is a cross gable. The cross gable that runs contiguous with the existing main mass is dropped down, so there is a differentiation. It's also differentiated in terms of the siding material. The siding material would be matching the material that's on the two other buildings that are part of the U-shaped. I mean, one possibility is that material could also be hardy plank. The windows are, again, all of the double casement windows on that addition as well. Let's see if there's anything else that I need to tell you about this. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about the more difficult part. In terms of having a lot of people, a lot of women, we really wanted to have the bathrooms as big as we could get them. And so really the only way for us to do that was to actually increase the space. So what you're seeing in between the two dormers on the top elevation, which are towards the north side of the carriage house, is what's called a Bromley dormer. Bromley dormer is actually a Victorian revival way of actually increasing space for second floor. You see very often in the fan district down in Richmond. And it can be very elegant, but in this case, I think what we want to do is we want to have it recede. Was Mr. Burns' suggestion, and I hardly agree with it. I think it's a good suggestion. So that you have an additional space in between the two dormers with headroom, and that space is clad with either the same thing we're using for the roofing material or with metal or some other material that can be painted out with whatever roof material is. I think that's about it. I mean, the only other thing to talk about is for both buildings. Right now, both buildings have a combination of copper gutters. Some are in good shape, some need repair, but they also have aluminum pre-finished bronze gutters. We want to repair in kind or replace in kind. Most of the locations of where you have the pre-finished aluminum are not primary locations. Oh, any comments?
Comments and questions on the carriage house? Mr. Daniel, then Mr. Plummer.
I gotta think all about the roof situation here, because there's a whole bunch, like, because now looking at this one, what I said was the last one, I'm having all kinds of thoughts, because you don't know about this one either necessarily. You're saying you're with asphalt, but you're not sure.
You mean what the material is?
You're not sure if it was originally asphalt. We don't have any baseline.
No, we have no pictures of it.
It's just looking at this one, even compared to the other one, this one, I would hate to see this one in metal in my mind, just thinking about it. I'd rather see it in slate, just because it would look more stately in that. It's got a little bit more character to it.
It's more colonial revival.
Yeah. No, I'm feeling the colonial revival from this one. This one definitely says it. It definitely doesn't hide that one bit. And that's where, so that's my own, I mean, otherwise conceptually, no, similar to what we said before, I think it's a great reuse of the space. And I love that you're bringing out a dormer concept that doesn't really get brought up a lot. So I don't necessarily have a good solution. So.
For the addition and all the grading around it, you'll need a disturbance permit for more than 2,500 square feet, I assume.
What's that?
I think you're gonna have more than 2,500 square feet of disturbance on the new addition, right? Ground plane wise for grading.
The new addition is on an existing first floor platform.
Okay, so it is. Okay, so
Those-
disturbance.
Funny,
Okay,
thank
you.
This building was built first. I'm fairly certain it was built at the same time that the ballroom was built. But this building was built actually, I think, behind this building because the roof structure is a concrete, one-way concrete slab.
If you go back to one of the other slides, actually, we can show you where this, yeah, this, so the location is actually this.
Okay, so you're just gonna tear it down and rebuild.
So you can
Okay,
see,
got it.
and this
Fine.
edge,
Thank you.
so we would, it's like a glass, as mentioned, it's like a glass walkway, so we
No
would
problem. Thank you.
essentially get rid of it and stay within the same footprint of that roof area.
Any other questions or comments from other board members? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Rowley. Take care.
No comments on the,
Oh, yeah, was there anything about the trail or the entrance gates that?
Well, we'd like to see what the entry gates look like, your proposal.
Once there's new, I think.
That's something, yeah.
Yeah.
you'd like to see what the gates are gonna look like?
Yes,
Yeah.
please show that next time.
Okay.
And the,
Yeah, because
board,
we haven't got to design that yet, but I think we can come up with a conceptual.
Yeah.
Something that would be close to it, because we're gonna have to go through a whole rigmarole with them.
yeah, National Park Service, that sounds, yeah, so.
They have very specific requirements that they're gonna put on us, and, we can't widen it at all.
Sure.
Lots of things along those lines, but it's gonna be very simple.
Okay, and I think, you had a drawing that showed the elevated, walkway with the large elevated
Mhm.
platforms. It'd be interesting to see what that looks like from the river, because it's gonna be seen from the river.
From the
Yeah.
where?
From the river, will you see
You
that
won't
from the
see it.
river? Okay, so it's on the
It's-
woods and
it's
so
in the
forth.
woods, it's on-
Okay.
Basically, it's on a pre-graded and gravelled old road. that
Then you got
can't
some,
access down.
then you got some posts that are pretty tall.
Yeah, but you won't be able to see it because it's wooded.
Okay,
And the
perfect.
post will bring it, the actual deck will be below the upper cut
Got it.
of the steep slopes that come down against it.
Okay,
So it's not gonna be like all of a sudden this huge structure. And the other thing
Perfect.
that we're gonna do is with that viewing deck, we're very conscientious about the, looking up from the house and not all of a sudden that becoming a obstacle.
right.
So we've done all our grade studies to figure out, it's gonna be fairly flat to the ground.
Show that next time.
Okay, yeah.
Please do.
Yeah, we
I'm
can-
sure the site grading and all that, because.
And so, and again, the purpose of the boardwalk is because that's the only way we can
Yeah.
hit grade to
Trading.
be able to do the ADA stuff.
Yes, if you could, show some details of the boardwalk, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's-
Good job.
Ms. Megan.
Thank you.
Oh,
Great
I'm
job.
sorry, on the issue of ground disturbance, though, for the trail construction, we talked last time about talking to the archaeology collections.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And
Okay, great.
And
we're
we're trying
trying
to
to,
respond to,
we're trying to actually meet with them
okay,
to chat more about, because as I mentioned, we're already working with staff. So this is going through, it doesn't require, even though it's governed by an SE, we don't have to do any type of SEA, at least we don't think so right now. So we're going through the interpretation process to get these approved.
okay.
And so we are working with zoning staff, including the archaeological branch.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep, thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for letting me sit. That was
Yeah,
great.
of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent, man.
Have a good evening, sir. Okay. Our final workshop. And I thank you for your patience. ARB WK 2025-HM 0008 1850 Old Reston Avenue demolition and construction. Applicant is proposing to preserve the Bowman House as a detached, single-family dwelling and redevelop the property with townhomes at a 0.64 FAR. Sir, again, if you could state your name for the record.
Spellman. Actually, I'll need to recuse myself. Our firm is involved with this project.
Okay.
Call me when you're.
You got it.
Wondered about that when I saw his name saw that company on.
My name is Andrew Painter. I'm a zoning attorney at Walsh Colucci. Picking up on a thread from the last one, if you haven't been down to the last application property, you really should go. I've had the honor of officiating 2 weddings there, and our law firm actually did its 40th anniversary there, as well as our 30th anniversary there, sort of our party and stuff. So
One of my law partners had his retirement party there, so.
yeah, it's incredible. Okay, this is, we're coming to you way early. It's good seeing several of you all again. This property along Old Reston Avenue is subject to a prior zoning application that was approved back in 2019. And I think Mr. Burns, Mr. Zellman, Ms. Orr, Ms. Murray, and Mr. Plumpy were on the ARB back then in the before times. And so we're going to kind of walk through the site, reintroduce it. there is nothing that we filed yet with the county except for a pre-application discussion. What we're doing, just given the sensitivity of this particular site, is kind of doing the rounds with what we think are the stakeholders that really should have some input on this. And we'd like to solicit the feedback before we, file anything. Okay. I'm joined this evening by Charles Betancourt, who is with AFMA. That's the property owner. We'll hear from him in just a second. Will Carnahan, Jack McLaren, and Evan Goldman, who is here. They're all three of them with EYA. And then Zach Fountain, who used to be with the county, and now he is with Walsh Colucci as a seasoned land use planner. Okay. So I think we can go to the next slide. So what we'd like to do is just have a sort of an agenda. We'll do some introductions. I'll go through the existing conditions and the comprehensive plan, and then I'll turn it over to Evan to walk through EYA's, history and how they approach the site, and then the proposed concept plan and historic design. The bottom line with all of this is that this site was approved. It's a historic site. We'll walk through it, but it was approved for a 2-wing office building in 2019. Extremely modern design. I will show it to you, and we'll talk about it. And of course, we all know what's happened with the office market. And so what AFMA is proposing to do is to start fresh and look for a development partner that can come in and do something that could be not only marketable, but also I think does a better job, no offense to the prior approval, does a better job of honoring the things that we heard from the ARB last time and what staff had raised concerns about, even though staff did recommend approval. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so we'll keep on going. And I'll turn it over to Charlie real quick, if you want to just stand up and just talk about AFMA real quick.
So, you know his story as well as I do now, but AFMA, we're a 145-year-old nonprofit, member-owned, provide life insurance and other financial products to members of the military and their families. This Reston location has been our headquarters. We had full staff there pre-COVID, post-COVID. The environment's changed. We anticipated with the redevelopment in 2019, growing the staff on site, we're distributed workforce. Doesn't work anymore. We're member owned, so the location is a member asset. We've got to be smart with our members' money. What do you do about it? Called Evan and said, hey, what's the highest and best use here? Well, townhouses would be a good fit, a highest best use. We didn't solicit bids from other people. We looked and said, who can handle this and do it really well? And like Andrew was saying, kind of leave the site better than we found it. We think EYA is the group that can do that. And so I'm happy to be working with them and anticipate partnering with them throughout the development. So that's kind of the backstory on how we ended up here.
We can go to the next slide. So just real quick introduction to EYA, because we're going to hear back from Evan after I give sort of a soliloquy of the history of the site.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to meet you all. I'm Evan Goldman, Executive Vice President for Acquisitions and Development at EYA. I'm one of the owners of the company and happy to be here. So who we are, we've been around for over 30 years. Some of you may know us. We've done a number of neighborhoods throughout the region. We have about 50 neighborhoods we've developed at this point, all throughout every jurisdiction in the DC region. We started in Virginia. We are currently based in Bethesda, but have a number of projects we're working on specifically within Fairfax County. What we're known for is incredibly intensive community outreach. We do more. That was funny. Will, who's new in my office, just out of college, asked me, how many community meetings I've done. I think I've done. I said 500. It's probably in the range of 400 to 500 at this point. Most of our projects have 20 to 30, sometimes 50, sometimes 80 meetings, and we do that because we really incorporate community ideas into what we actually end up developing, and that's why we have often a lot of community support and staff and supervisors. So that's who we are, but we're also a really great, stable, mid-sized company in the region. We're based here. Everything we do is in this region, and so we care a lot about reputation. And then the next slide, just see. Go to the next slide. Quick map. That's where we've developed. So everywhere around the region, generally near transit or walkable retail areas, our tagline is life within walking distance. If you've ever listened to NPR in the morning, you've heard our tagline in commercials. If you did not recognize it, you will now hear it the next time you listen to it in the morning. But anyway, yeah, so life within walking distance is how we look at sites. It's part of the reason we're excited about this property and the opportunity to make it that much more connected to the downtown Reston core. Next slide. Do you want me, I'll do existing conditions, right? And hand it over? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so the next slide after this. For those of you who aren't as familiar with the property, you can see it here. Reston Town Center is just to the west of Reston Parkway. Our site is just to the east of it. So great walking distance to the core of Reston. It's like literally a 5-minute walk. But you can also walk on the south side to the Whole Foods Shopping Center, which is right here. And so you have the ability to walk to both retail as well as the downtown Reston core. One of the things we've been asked to improve from the neighbors to the north of us, the condo owners who we've met with here and surrounding us, is an improvement to create a walkable connection all the way up in front of their property along Old Reston, because that doesn't exist to it today, to make it that much more walkable, not just for us, but for them as well, to get into the core. Next slide shows the blown up part of the property. So there's the historic house, which we'll talk about today, is going to stay. We're not really proposing much of any changes to the historic house. It's more about the site. We'll talk about that. This is the existing office building today. There is a break in the building that creates a view down towards the trail, which went away in the approval in 2019. There was an office building that got approved here and here. We're reintroducing that open space. You'll see that vision in a moment to create that connectivity. But that's the site as it exists today. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. And before we go on, so just a couple of things too. So, the site itself is about 5.19 acres. It is not on a Fairfax County historic overlay district. It is not listed on the National Register or on the Virginia Landmarks Register. The manor house itself was A. Smith Bowman's house when he bought the property, and he moved down here in 1927. It is listed on the Fairfax County Inventory of Historic Sites. It's a beautiful house. There is a white masonry wall which runs along Old Reston Avenue. Now that white masonry wall, we think sort of gives a very bucolic kind of feel when you're going down Old Reston Avenue, which, by the way, Old Reston, I think, was the second, believe it or not, the second Virginia Scenic Byway designated in the Commonwealth after Georgetown Pike. I think the only section of the scenic byway that exists is right here. Because you do have the old distillery building here, which, as you probably know, the Bowmans, when they bought Sunset Hills Farm, needed to do something with all the corn, and they decided to create some low shelf Virginia Gentleman and Fairfax County bourbon. Those are the trade names. And so you also have the historic pond, or historic gazebo that's here. This pond is not historic. It was put in when the 1986 office buildings were constructed. It's the stormwater management pond. What was there before, and I think it's fed by an underground spring. What was there before was kind of like it was a man-made kind of structure. And you can go on the historic aerial imagery site and sort of see sort of a square thing, but it then feeds into it, into these ponds that are right here. And there is there is a garage that was constructed that is not historic. There is a kitchen addition to this house that was constructed sometime in the 80s or 90s. And then there's a lot of surface parking around here as well. So when you're looking at sort of the historic portions of the property, you're really looking at the manor house, you're looking at this gazebo, which we believe goes back to the late 1800s when Dr. Max Wheely came out here, bought all the land and tried to create or incorporated the town of Wheely, which, was never fully realized. And then there is this wall, which again is not historic. It was, constructed at some point in time between 1962 and 1970, from what we can tell. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, keep going. Okay, so from a comprehensive planning perspective, this is really an outlier piece. Everything around us is planned for residential uses. This site is planned for mixed use at a 0.64 FAR. So we could do commercial or we can do residential uses. And obviously AFMO purchased the property back in 2009. They bought it from George Kafori, who received a previous approval back in 2007 for something called Boxwoods, where he was going to construct a condo and a commercial office building on the property as well. Now, the comprehensive plan's recommendations, and this is something that's important to note. If you go to the plan today, it basically says that the Bowman House should be preserved. That's all it says. The comprehensive plan was recently adopted or amended in 2000 at the end of 2023. after a 4-year-long process. And for whatever reason, they stripped out a lot of the historic preservation recommendations for this particular property. So those recommendations are that the A. Smith Bowman House and the surrounding historic features should be preserved. Any new building should be sensitively sited in relation to the Bowman House, and the pond and the gazebo should be preserved to maintain the property's aesthetic character. Those recommendations no longer exist in the comprehensive plan, which I think is a shame. I don't know why the Restonians of all people would have stripped this out of, the Bowman House recommendations. So we've maintained those. We understand that they're important, and that has helped drive what we're going to present this evening. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So as Charlie had mentioned, AFMA purchased the property back in 2009. They restored the house, which was in disrepair. They restored the gazebo. They rebuilt the cinder block wall and actually added portions of the wall sort of down here. And then in 2019, came through with a concept to build a, two 3-story modern office buildings, about 145,000 square feet. It's about 50 feet to the height of the roofs. You can see how it's sited around, around the house. The historic features of the manor house, the gazebo, and the wall were all maintained. And then you also had sort of other features too that you can see. A formal garden, and it's hard to pick up here, but there's a formal garden that was, that we tried to plug in. If you go back to the historical aerial imagery, there was a formal garden on the north side of the house. Okay, that went away. There were a series of boxwoods here that all died before AFMA located on the property. And so we were trying to reestablish that formal garden behind the house. And I think we were going to use it for, events related to AFMA and things like that. So this was going to be the corporate headquarters for it, and you can sort of see how everything was going to be constructed. One of the concerns that staff had raised during this process was the lack of public accessibility on the property. This is really, it's not a secure campus, but there's a lot of sensitive things that occur on here. And so we didn't really want to have, any of the public traversing the property. We were not comfortable with that. So that was one of the concerns that staff raised. Well, another concern that staff raised too was, you've got this formal relationship or this line of sight between the gazebo and the manor house. And by introducing, sort of a building here, you're kind of slashing through. Staff had asked us to look at coming up with some sort of breezeway, which would not have worked. Just architecturally wouldn't have worked, probably wouldn't have looked great. But that was something that we weren't able to accommodate. So next slide, please. All right. So during that process, we came and appeared before the ARB, and we had two, I think, very positive meetings. Some of the feedback that we received, just to walk through real quick, the ARB at the time supported maintaining a buffer between the Bowman House and the office building, so that's where you get, that formal garden. They appreciated the modern architecture, so it was a radical departure architecturally from obviously everything else that had been built on that property. Maintaining the existing white masonry wall along Old Reston Avenue, and a recommendation to preserve the scenic view sheds, which I think they were doing from Old Reston Avenue. We can go to the next slide. Some of these architectural commitments, and these were things that historic preservation staff historic research staff had recommended. Just to walk you through with it real quick, under Proffer 13, there's six different recommendations. The first is the preservation of the Bowman House, with any exterior modifications or additions being subject to ARB approval. Okay. Proffer 13B, maintenance of the gazebo, any exterior modifications or additions subject to ARB approval. Number 13C, retention of the existing wall along Old Reston Avenue with any replacement or modification to be similar in style. And there were portions of the wall that we were deconstructing and reconstructing. Proffer 13D, submission prior to site plan approval of the plans to ARB for comment, but not necessarily approval. 13E, preparation of an architectural survey of the carriage house on the site prior to site plan approval. And the last one, installation of protective construction fencing around the house. These are all commitments that we are certainly willing to carry forward in what we're going to show you this evening. And I would just say, before I turn it over to Evan, the types of characteristics that we had before are extremely important. And what you are going to see, I think, is a radical departure from what we received approval for. And I have to say it again, and I was in love with the design back in 2019. I really liked it. And the ARB liked it as well. I do think, though, personally, when I look at this site, knowing its history and knowing what the view shed is like as you come down, this is a far more contextually sensitive design. It's more elegant, and I think it fits in far better. It preserves all of those historic elements that we were talking about. It preserves the view corridors. It accommodates the adjacencies to the Stratford condominium to the west and to the north. It replicates the formal gardens that were there before. We still have things that we have to do. Fairfax County staff wants to have a sidewalk along Old Ruston Avenue. There's some severe topo, and then there's the wall. You know, we may have to deconstruct the wall. We may have to reconstruct it. We may have to put the sidewalk on the inside of the wall. That's all subject to final engineering. We just haven't gotten there yet, okay? With respect to the house, right now it's used as an office building. We hope to restore it back to its original residential use, whether that's a single family use, as you've seen in some, other historic property projects, or it's split up into small condominium or a duplex. We just haven't gotten there yet. But we're really excited about what we're thinking. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn it back over to Evan, and he'll walk you through what it is we're proposing.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background on our historic experience. EYA, we're known as a town home developer in this region, but we do quite a bit of mixed income housing, and we also do historic or projects that have historic preservation uses on their site. So next slide. This is a neighborhood in Michigan Park, which is just north of Catholic University in DC, if you've ever been there. The houses in the neighborhood are red brick, white trim, beautiful detailing, beautiful gables. There's a seminary on the site, which the Josephites occupy, and they asked us to come in and work with them to redevelop the back 4 acres of their seminary. And this was a project where we were able to get the seminary to be on the National Trust of Historic Spaces. We preserved the land all around the seminary building and put that into a public access easement in perpetuity, and then developed on the rear houses that had they were both contextually sensitive and appropriate in detail to the surrounding neighborhood of homes, as well as the color palette and details of the existing seminary building. The next slide is another neighborhood of ours called Chelsea Heights in Silver Spring. Very similar to what we're doing here in AFMA, where there was a historic house on the property, which we returned to the house and sold that as a single family home, or sold to somebody who renovated it into their single family home. And then we built houses around it of similar style, similar architectural, and keeping both of the house as well as the neighborhood around it. The next slide. Chancellor's Row, once again, back near Catholic University. This is another seminary. This was the Paulist, thank you. And so they have a beautiful old historic stone building that was their seminary. They've actually now moved into the Josephite Seminary building that I mentioned 2 slides ago. And then we built a mixture of row homes that fit within the existing character of the row homes within that neighborhood. And then also homes that match the architectural style and detailing of the old historic house. Go to the next slide. And then Robinson Landing, I don't know if any of you know or have been to this project of ours. It's in Old Town Alexandria on the river. This was where George Washington once walked on the Strand. This was a site where at one point we were the largest active open archaeological dig on the eastern seaboard. When you're doing due diligence on a project, something you don't want to hear is 3 Revolutionary War era ships, but we found 3 Revolutionary War era ships underneath the site. We spent $7 million in archaeology in 14 months and then donated over 100,000 artifacts to the city of Alexandria. But we did build in coordination with the community here, a very, very engaged residential community. A beautiful project that is modern in keeping on the river, something completely different and unique, but the interior spaces on the backside that face towards the community are really of the community. Red brick, or in this case, it was a warehouse building, so it had kind of a warehouse aesthetic to it. And part of the reason, you go to the next slide, part of the reason we're able to do all this is we have in-house architecture, we have in-house engineering, we have in-house sales, we have in-house construction. So Jack McLaurin, who's going to speak in a moment, is our head of architecture, in-house, works for EYA. He's been with us for 10 years, but was with Lassard for 20 years before that. And so we do it ourselves, so we can be unique on every project and really look at the context and do something attractive. So you're going to see in a moment a view looking up, or what we're proposing, looking up at the front of the Bowman House, which quite frankly, in the last approval, which is a really nice approval, was hidden by the office building. And so go to the next slide. Sorry, I have to start with site constraints. I forgot about this. So this is the existing house. This is actually the rear of the house where the parking lot is today. The front of the house faced down towards this court and towards the south. The main features of the house, we'd be restoring this likely to a single family house. Potentially, if somebody wants to convert it into duplex, that could be interesting, but we would prefer it to be a single family house. It's a gorgeous house inside. The whole first floor, I mean, the walls are a foot thick with these beautiful pocket doors. The kitchen is beautiful, even though that part is not historic. It deserves to be a single family house. It might be too big and too expensive for somebody to own as a single family house. So in that case, we'd do something more like a duplex. But keeping the house itself, obviously, is a main constraint on the site. The pond would remain, as well as the pergola or the gazebo outside of the pond. The wall, as Andrew mentioned, we'd be maintaining along Old Reston. It might shift with the grade and be rebuilt, but it would be there as well. The grading of the site is quite a challenge. There's about 30 feet of grade over the course of the 5 acres. So we've had to work really hard to get the site grade to work so we can get a handicap accessible site and get the streets to work. So most of these homes will have elevators. We expect a lot of our purchasers to be empty nesters. We've met with the condo association behind us already. They would have a lot of concerns, I'd say, about separation and buffers. They like the residential use instead of commercial use. They like the buffering we're proposing, the heights we're proposing, and they were pretty excited by the design we shared with them. And then we have a number of little mews and open space and park spaces throughout the design that you'll see in a moment. We will reintroduce a historic boxwood garden. And we think we've come up with townhome architecture that's reflective of the existing historic homes. So will be, I believe that's the next slide. Let's see. These are just more views of the existing house. And we can come back to these and go to the next slide. So this is a perspective view looking at the front of the Bowman house from the bottom of the site. So the pond and the gazebo are right here. The trail is just on the other side of a bunch of trees. And unlike the last design, which was more modern, we've tried to come up with something that would feel like it could have existed around this old historic house. So as you can see, white brick, similar color detailing, bays. We've created this muse space. So these houses actually front out onto this muse space. And we've dealt with the grade by creating a mid-level, very similar to what's out there today, where there's a kind of a court in between the two office building spaces. We've generally kept that space and that view corridor. And by doing that, it allows these homes to feel like two-story houses, very similar to the feel of the Bowman house, but lets the house be more proud, right? The house has taller ceiling heights. It's a bigger building. It kind of feels taller and celebrated on top of what you're seeing as the smaller height homes here. These are 3-story homes on the backside facing towards the alley, but on the front, they have that type of detail. You can go to the next slide. Then the next slide is an image looking from Old Reston. So here's Old Reston Avenue. This is the white wall. This is that sidewalk we were just talking about that we're going to figure out how to snake into the space between the wall and the street, which generally should work. In a few locations, we may have to lower the wall. But then you're seeing kind of the houses going off up the hill from Old Reston, and then these houses nestled in the grade. The last view was looking up in between the muses over there. When you're coming up Old Reston today, you actually can't even see the house until you get to right about here because of the slope and the hill. So those houses on the south side are in a location that you wouldn't have even seen those in the past. Today, they wouldn't have blocked the view of the house. And then these houses here are really sitting in the back parking lot of the existing historic home. And then go to the next slide. I'm going to hand it over to Jack. I'm going to talk through, actually, you want me to talk plan or?
You're doing it all anyway.
I'll talk plan and I'll hand it over to you.
If we.
Go faster.
Yeah, just it's getting late for us. And I know it's a lot of information. I appreciate it, but
So real quick then, this is the plan of the site, the historic home right here. It'll have its own driveway coming in off of the new street. They'll have the only addition we'd be making would be to add a garage off of the kitchen, the non-historic part here. This is that kind of muse open space that we'd be creating in front of the house. That would be a public space, so anybody can walk up into that space, whether you are a resident or not. The pergola, all this will be retained and public, all of the sidewalks will have public access easements so people can walk through the site. And there will be a trail connection to the trail in coordination with our neighbors as well. The idea of people getting through the site and enjoying it. This is the location we'd like to add a boxwood garden that also would be open to the public. So a place there may be a water fountain, benches, a place where you can really enjoy the flowers. We would likely do some sculptural art pieces that can have a play element to them. So for people who have grandkids visiting, there'd be a place to go, but not a traditional playground with, ugly play equipment. Well, not always ugly. So that's the overall design. The next slide, those are the two views we shared in the renderings. We can keep going to the next slide. And then this is the old approval. You can see kind of the extents of the old approval in red relative to what ours is the red. The background is the old approval. And so you can see we kept with that same buffer from the existing community behind us. And with that, I will hand it over.
You sure?
Into detail. These are only a few more slides.
Are you sure?
Yes, go.
Let's see. My name is Jack McLaurin. He's so good. He did all the fun stuff. Let's just go to the next slide. So in our opinion, the historical respect on this site was really largely about the plan. And then that's what Evan just kind of walked through to you. It's the massing, it's the view shed and everything. But then there is the architecture built in 1989, the Bowman House in a classical revival style. Well, we're not necessarily going to repeat that in our architectural homes today. We want to lend to the urban side in the terms of form and the proximity to the town center, but do it in a very residential manner. So we tried to pick up on some of the cues. The massing is very key, like Evan talked about. And the thing about townhomes versus the office building or a multifamily building, townhomes can absorb the site, that they're very sensitive to the site and they can step and step and step. And you can see them stepping and stepping and stepping up the hill. These are 4-story homes. Evan said 3 in the back, but they're actually 4 in the back. It's 3 with a loft. But the idea of recreating the courtyard that was there or that's currently there today with a monumental set of stairs, some planter boxes, which, we have bios that, the stormwater management, we need to pick them up. We're able to bury the garage level on the front of the house. And that leaves that 2-story facade that he's talking about with a roof terrace that's activated that can look out onto it. But clearly, so that's the massing side of the thing. The 4 stories is felt in the rear on the alley. There are some other portions of the site that we talked about the grade where this won't exist. So there'll be 3-story fronts with a 4-story in the rear. That's not in proximity to the home. Let's go to the next slide. This is just kind of a repeat of the same thing for the sake of time. We'll just keep going. Let's go. And then, obviously, it's very obvious the colors and materials, right? We're going to be full brick, the brick trim, the heavy cornice, kind of a nod to the classical revival, black downspouts, awnings. It's trendy today, fortunately. I mean, the market really kind of loves it. It's not a farmhouse vernacular that I'm sure you're familiar with, but we do think that people like that stark feel to it, and clearly it's complementing. We have a over 30-year history of, like Andrew says, being contextual. And it doesn't mean, in my opinion, repeat. It means being sensitive to and emulate, but still be today. And that's the idea of this flat roof form. These are very low sloping, classical revival kind of roofs, with the hidden cornices. They're all the gutter system and everything, they're all kind of boxed out and extended. Well, we feel like the flat roof versus a gable roof would really plays up on that. Let's go to the next one. Similar to the same thing of kind of go ahead, keep going. And I think this is kind of last, but these formal spaces, Evan talked about the garden, recreating the muse. We're going to work with Mr. Plumpy there to try to work and do a nice job here, but you can see the idea of repeating the hardscaping. This is stepping so we can get some accessibility in there and honoring the gazebo. We want to talk about the wall a little bit. I think that might be the end of the presentation, but if we jump. Okay, so this is an old image of the garden. It got smaller and smaller as the years went along. But the idea of recreating it, bringing it back, I'm pretty sure we're not going to have the pool. Let's keep going. I want to try to get, there's the gazebo. I believe this is the actual last one, Evan, right? So if we can jump to the very, very end, we got a couple back of house slides. which is not uncommon, but I just want to get to the images so we can have this, just go to the very last, just go bam, 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 bam.
I think you should mention that the WD trail is one of the boundaries.
Yeah, to the south of us.
Yeah,
So that was that
it's an
connection.
important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So I mentioned we would have a connection to the WDA.
And that side of the site, we need a retaining wall, but we're maintaining a tree line behind the, near the apartments, the multifamily where we have what we call front load townhomes, which has garages come to the front. We did a lot of real serious grading work on there to preserve those trees behind those homes as a buffer as well too. But this is that wall, and this is where, in our mind, this is the non-historic portion, and this is the historic portion in here. If we go one more slide, you'll see that the idea of achieving a sidewalk on this next portion, is that it?
That's it.
There you go.
Oh.
So this is we're pretty close, but being able to get a 5-foot sidewalk and a tree panel in here. If we go back one, this is where we need a little bit of help, either extend maybe back to, but we want to try to regrade that and not have the public sidewalk. Is it 4?
No, I think it's,
Sorry.
it was 4.
Go forward.
Yeah.
Area.
That one. This is where we're going to have a little bit of challenge, but this is a non-historic part of the wall. What we really don't want to do is bring the public onto this side of the site and then bring them back out. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. We want to, we're going to have porosity through the site and be able to go from top to bottom, but we want to really bring the public sidewalk in here. So we need a little bit of help rebuilding this, maybe realigning it with this wall and regrading it in an effort to try to get the sidewalk.
And potentially creating an opening in the wall so that people
Yeah.
can get from the public sidewalk into the site.
Yeah. So that's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions and comments from board members?
Go first.
Yeah, you can go first. You raised your hand first, Ms. Wong.
It's thank you for the presentation. It bring me back to my memory lane. When I first moved into Reston, I rent a condominium, just the unit right next to both house. So I know the site very well, and I think you capture like those site feature really well. The gazebo, the white wall, the slope of the road, and it's like a older carriage road become an older Reston Avenue.
Right.
So, and the house style you proposed, I think it's very proper. Funny thing about that site is because it's a very pronounced the white wall at outside. So, and there's no sidewalk along the wall. So you always feel that side is some mysterious things happen that you don't quite know what's happened there. That's so. Overall, I like the proposed site plan, and I like the proposed housing style, and I think you capture the very important feature of this site.
Appreciate that.
That's how I thank you for bringing it back to my memory.
I'm glad. And what you're saying is important to us too. Like, we think it's such a beautiful house, and we will make sure that the house has a private backyard portion behind it that would be its own. It'll have its own driveway. It'll have its own garage. But beyond that, there will be public sidewalks throughout the property so that the whole Reston community can really enjoy this historic asset, which will be really nice.
It's always feel like, oh, that's something inside the wall, and it's kind of like a lot of grown tree along the old Reston Avenue.
Yeah.
Not quite sure what's happened there, but it feel like it's got to be a nice place there.
Sure.
So it would be nice that the public could get to walk into it.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. Mr. Daniel?
Yeah, I was here for the original project too. I thought we really tried hard to get something that worked there, but I'm happy to see something that's trying to make the site instead a more, I guess, lived in space. Sorry to hear that AFMA's leaving. That's so, but I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that you're willing to carry forward those proffer commitments to this. I guess that's one big thing. I'm ashamed that somehow me and Ms. Vaughn were on the planning group that did the rest and comp plan update, and I must have been focusing on other parts, that those sections for this parcel were removed. Would you all entertain placing an easement on the Bowman House when y'all depart so that they would have to come to the ARB in the future? Because that's probably my biggest worry is, you know, AFA's been an amazing steward of the property. I think that's been my biggest thing. Every time, when you came last time, that was, you know, you described the site being something like it was a great house for taking folks who needed space separate from the office space you all were occupying. And you wanted to keep with that, with having, hey, we're gonna have a very modern building. We're still gonna keep this more intimate space for dealing with very sensitive issues that you all deal with, which is, you know, I think really appreciated. But my worry is once we get into this from a larger perspective and say we're successful in getting someone in this house, someone who's going to be able to afford and own a house like that is going to want to have to is going to have a lot of vision about it. And my worry is how much eventually how much strength we'll have to protect that once we lose a steward like AFMA who's really like committed to that. That's a larger question. It may not be an answerable one right now.
Yeah, let me talk to my partners and make sure I'm not saying, we're still in due diligence on the project. I want to make sure I'm not saying something that would somehow kill our ability to make this work. But our intent is for that house to remain, with the exception of the addition of the garage, largely as is essentially on the outside. And I can't imagine we'd have a problem with some sort of a proffer.
Well, there's already a proffer that requires us for.
And that may be, and that's part of, I may want to have a discussion with staff too, because it's frustrating that we lost the language that was in the plan and we're now relying on the proffer to do that. Well, the argument is proffer may be strong enough to do it. We don't get many bites at the apple when they're not in a historic overlay district.
Add this to help you too. There will be a homeowners association on the site that will incorporate the townhomes as well as the single family home. And just like most of our HOA documents, there will be restrictions on modifications to, exterior elements design. So it's in our interest as well to make sure that house remains largely as it is. So I think we're in the same place there.
We even, like we talked about the grading, well, we're working with a civil engineer who didn't understand sensitivity and graded kind of up against the house and kind of buried up to the porch and everything. And I got in there and just regraded everything back to not only to help him understand the sensitivity of the townhomes and how to absorb grade, but also to bring that back down so that garden can kind of.
Sometimes you got to put your arm around an engineer and he's designed it to do its job. Great.
Well, Evan, I mean, your other projects, I mean, have you looked at?
So we've done this
living in those homes?
Yeah, so I got to check. So when we've done it for the seminary buildings in DC, we actually got those registered on the National Historic Trust, National
Register
of Historic. Thank you. I don't remember if we did that for the single family home in Chelsea. Do you remember?
I did not.
But I don't know that we can't do that. I live in a house that's on the historic registry in DC. So let me just talk to my partners on that. But
I'm thinking about, this is me in my mind thinking of the great steward we've had right now for the property. And that change in process, there's been a lot of opportunity for the ARB to weigh in and provide input on those things. That is going to fade away again because this is not a historic overlay district. So in the end, we'll be providing recommendations on changes to plans. We don't, we do have some properties around the county that have easements on them that are required to come to the ARB. I'm not necessarily saying that's the route that I would suggest pushing, but I'm looking to try to make sure I have as much comfort on the property itself.
Yeah, we'll look at that. And just again, any exterior modifications under the proffers today, the law affecting the property, we must come and get approval.
Okay. And that might be enough then. That may be, it really shocked me when you mentioned that because I think with the comp plan changes, because that was a laborious process to go through that. And to find out that that's gone is frustrating. I'll let my other colleagues talk. I like the concept. I think it's very sensitive, but I would want to hear, we got a lot of great architects here. I think I have a lot better insight on some of that than I would. There you go.
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, I was here back in the day. And I think that the office buildings are nice, modern buildings, but I was never really comfortable with the juxtaposition in the imposition they were to the house in their location. And so, yeah, I think this is terrific. And, This is the first time I remember something I was actively involved in. It had some tiny input into its design being torn down quickly. But, you know, that's life. So yes, and conceptually, I'm okay with all of what you're proposing. I like opening up the alley, the historic view, and stuff of that sort. You had meant one or a few, and I forget who it was. Maybe it was the gentleman who used to work for Lassard. I've forgotten your name. My apologies. Jack. Okay. I think that you mentioned this is like popular, trendy now. Yeah.
The white farmhouse stuff.
Yeah, that stuff. Well, I have a neighborhood near me that's just being transformed.
Yeah.
By that, where you're getting these white boxes.
Yeah, that's not this.
Black windows, and there's no articulation, and I'm sorry, but they're awful.
Yeah.
Right? So you have an opportunity here. These look very flat. These renderings look flat. You showed more detail. You talked about the friezes and the columns and stuff like that. But these renderings look like boxes with things glued onto the,
Sure.
I need more articulation. That would be my only comment.
Sure.
Is that, these are not inexpensive homes, and they need to reflect the robustness of the character and the articulation of the facades of the historic property. A little better than these renderings show. They may be there. It's just these renderings don't highlight it.
Yeah, do we have the time for me to just point out a couple elements? So, this bay here is a projected bay.
Okay.
And it's going to be,
Saying in the renderings that.
I understand, but I want to give you a comfort level, at least now. The cornices are built up. There is some corbelling and some roll-lock that are projected. This here is also a bay that is projected a foot past the front facade. But then also the facade, you see this jogging here, it's a little bit hard. The facade in its masonry has a projection too. So each home has a bay projection relief back to the front door, but then on the bay projection is a trimmed bay that's also projected. And then there's some banding. There's some soldiers. We always project our soldiers and roll locks 3/4 of an inch each to give it relief and shadow lines, which are very important to us. So it'll be there. You're right. Renderers I didn't do the rendering. I'm too old to do renderings like this.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I will say, which is amazing. This is the first time we've, in due diligence, created renderings of what something might look like, because the cost of doing renderings has come down enough that we can afford to do it. And so we had a gentleman we've worked with a bunch in Arizona help us. We gave him architectural style and he helped us work through the renderings.
Yeah.
But it's something we're now doing on many of our projects because it helps us visualize a site. And this site, the visual was so important. We didn't want to come before you with just a plan. We needed to show you what the view would look like. So it's pretty cool where we're headed.
And if Joe was here, this landscaping was stripped down to show the architecture and the porosity, but our landscaping is very robust. There'll be a relief panel in this wall.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be a blank wall in there like that, but.
We'll get there.
Other comment.
The inside joke about Joe, somebody.
I said if Joe was here, he'd be here another hour.
Not a bad, this is a tight plan, and everything seems neatly constrained and such.
Yeah.
But people have a lot of cars these days, and people have friends come to visit them.
Yeah. So we have, every house has 2 garage spaces, and then the streets have
The footprint.
on the first floor of the house.
Okay.
And then the streets have an extra 0.7 spaces per house for visitor parking. And then our HOA documents actually require homeowners to use their parking for cars, not for other uses. You can't put a wood shop and you can get fined if you don't use it. So that helps with that.
The front loads have 2
Oh,
cars
right.
in the garage and then 2-car driveway.
That's right.
So they can have 4 cars.
So the biggest house will have 4.
Okay, that's a little reassuring, but
The houses of this expense and when they have elevators, the projects we're doing now in Fairfax County where we can do elevators, and at these houses will be $1 million to $1.4 million. So at that level, about 60 to 70% of the purchasers are empty nesters. So typically you end up then with, 2 cars because you don't have, you have visitors coming, you have kids coming to visit, but you don't have the teenage kid with the car and the other stuff coming. Yeah. Sorry.
But, okay, so if your demographic is empty nesters and it's a four-story house, you're gonna have to have the elevators.
Yeah, that's right. It's not every house will have an elevator, but most will have it.
Other questions or comments from board members? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you waiting until the end and we appreciate your presentation.
We'll be back to you all when we're, filing. Let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
All right, we have no presentations. So that moves, can, Mr. Burns, do you mind getting Mr., thank you, Kay, getting Mr. Plummer. Sorry.
That's so funny. Did you come see it in situ? Oh my God, it was amazing. But that is like the last thing you want to.
Absolutely, yes. And then
Right, me too.
No, he left his computer, so.
And his jacket.
Got his wallet.
Empty now. His wallet.
Empty now.
He didn't say anything.
And cash in it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
The regular office buildings, we jump posts and.
Well, while we wait for Joe to come back, let's get into board and staff
Yeah,
items
let's,
and move along.
Get it rolling.
All right, so first is approval of minutes, review and action on the January 2025 ARB meeting minutes. Did anyone have any comments or changes? If not, I will entertain a motion, and I saw Ms. Mangum.
move that the AR.
Oh, hold on, Mr. Johnson.
I had one quick revision that I realized I needed to make. It was on page 9. I said Mr. Mangum instead of Miss Mangum. Sorry. So that's just one. It's just one revision I had. So that's it.
Thank you.
With the revision.
Sure.
Whoops, guess what? I raised my hand on the. This is the meeting minutes and pay. Okay,
Yes,
yes,
yes, it's-
okay.
it's the same.
I move that the ARB approve the January 9th, 2025 meeting minutes with the minor revision and pay the clerk Ryan Johnson.
Seconded by Mr. Daniel. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. The treasurer's report as of January 31, 2025. We had $24,237.32 in our bank account. Denise, anything else on that?
The only thing that I'd like to report is it does look like you all have to pay for the amount that you committed to for the NAPC training in October for snacks. I think we got it entirely covered by grant money, so that's not, we shouldn't be seeing, if it ends up,
700.
it'll be a tiny bit.
Okay, thank you. All right, no problem. All right, moving into administrative discussion, updates and reports. Denise, ARB Administrator, hiring update.
Yeah, so the position, we had to re-advertise the position. The new position closes tomorrow. So wish us luck, please.
We wish you luck.
Tell your friends.
Applicants or?
I don't get a certified list until after it closes.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know.
But why did?
Elijah,
Because yes, the pool was too small. It wasn't a competitive pool.
okay.
Okay. All right. We need to do our NAPC membership renewal and it's a $200 expenditure. Is that right, Denise?
Yes, exactly.
Mr. Daniel,
Mr. Chair, I move that the ARB approve the funding of the NAPC membership for an amount not to exceed $200.
there's a motion. Is there a second? Mr. Burns seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Denise, Skyline Center, Section 106 consultation.
So we were asked to consult on an office conversion project for the Skyline Center, which was determined eligible for listing by DHR in 2022. The project will be using HUD funding and will be converting 2 of the 3 high-rise offices.
Sorry, I sent you a note saying that I need to refuse.
I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay.
And then just, okay.
Okay.
I don't deal with HUD, so I'm gonna hang around, but as I've been
And deal
told,
with is the right term, so. just-
Yeah.
Yeah.
but as normal, I won't say anything because I'm also not allowed to advise them how we can.
And actually, it's just a report out. So yeah,
Okay.
it's over. It's done. So, yep.
Ms. Mangum, you can come back.
Rachel.
But she may not be able to hear it. I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
Just a form that.
Okay. Was that it for that, Denise?
Just that, we requested that the HABs documentation that they were already going to do be submitted to MPS. and that the ARB will be a review agency for the interpretive signage. So, yeah, I'm sorry, it was already, yeah.
I figured it was going to be, it's not a requirement. We're not approving it. I think that like the recusal is,
Okay.
limit my approval.
Sure, yeah.
All right, correspondence and announcements, Mount Gilead Carriage House documentation.
So in your administrative package that for this meeting, you should have received the HABs documentation that was submitted to the NPS. That was submitted from Fairfax County Park Authority and requested by the ARB prior to the demolition of the carriage house. And they're waiting on an NPS number, but the document will go on file at the Library of Congress or the documentation.
Thank you. Hohick Church correspondence.
That their letter thanking you. I think it's finally over. They're happy. So,
Seem very happy.
yes.
Okay.
It was in place for Christmas services.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
The Lindsay Monument, new fencing and plaque dedication.
Yes, so the DAR worked with the Park Authority Archaeology and Collections Branch. There are no burials at this site. It is a marker that has no burials. They did JPR in 2014 and found nothing. So it's a fenced-in site. There's just a marker. The DAR work, as I said, work with the Park Authority Archaeology Group. There's going to be a dedication ceremony of the wrought iron fence. They upgraded the fencing around the marker. And they're going to dedicate the wrought iron fence. And then there's a plaque now that they put in honoring the Revolutionary War patriot, Major William Lindsay. And the dedication ceremony is going to be on May 3rd, 2025, and you all are welcome to attend.
Attend at once. Can we attend all together?
I mean, that's, yeah. Well, it is we could, you could. It's a.
Okay, so it's a public meeting.
Just let me know if
We
people.
can't all gather together and do this.
10 feet apart, right?
We're just
10 feet
there.
apart.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's just an information item and an invitation if you'd like to attend.
Thank you, Denise. All right, old business, design guidelines, acknowledgement page, and guidance on EV charging stations. I guess let's start with the design guidelines, acknowledgement page.
Yeah, so I know we've been discussing adding a new page to the guidelines to thank past ARB members and DPT staff who participated in the development, which I guess will go after the current acknowledgements page. The good news is that we're very likely going to be getting our final round of revisions out to traceries by the end of the month, which is basically 2 weeks away. So we'd want to get that new page from you guys, so it's ready to go before then, so it could be included.
Okay.
I hate to say it, but I offered to write it previously.
Mr. Daniels offering his services. He said he.
I
offered to write it
I
previously.
believe I offered previously.
So that's what we're coming back to whoever would like to step up and pull together that information, however you would like to do that. But that would be,
Yeah.
we'd be grateful for that assistance.
Either just by the end of the month or.
Yeah, 228, that's a Friday, yeah.
And we stuck the acknowledgements page in the administration folder too, just so you can see the format, but just to get names.
I remember me saying that.
Raising your hand.
I feel like I already committed myself, so I'll do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, go ahead, John.
Yeah, just move, and last meeting, we're also discussing proactively developing guidelines for EV charging stations, before they start coming in on mass. Which will specifically mention existing guidance from the ACHP, which she forwarded to me. Thank you. And Denise also suggested seeing whether there are other organizations like National Park Service or Association with Preservation Technology who might also have some guidance that we can pull from. And again, since we are looking at sending traceries our final round revisions at the end of the month, there may not be time to incorporate new guidelines into the documents themselves, and we might instead be looking at creating a supplemental addendum. But if you feel that the ACHP guidelines are sufficient, we might be able to include them in our comments to traceries. So what are people's thoughts about how to proceed?
And I didn't share them with everybody, but I certainly could make the link available or just summarize. But essentially, it's a set of 6 criteria. If you meet the following conditions, design it in such a way, it's low profile, it's a few, different things, but it's very common sense and it's not very prescriptive. That's essentially what the ACHP guidance is. It's just a set of conditions under which they felt like installation of equipment would not have an adverse effect if historic properties were present. Different ball of wax here, I get that. So, just that was the basis for where those conditions.
Yeah, but I think having something more general might be helpful.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's a good starting point.
right, just to have something, and then we can kind of, as we get more of these, figure out where we're going.
So would that mean you all would like adapt that language to kind of just make more generalized for historic overlay districts?
If you're comfortable with ACHP's recommendations, we
I
could,
mean, I'm comfortable with it too, but I'm biased.
we could just send them to traceries to see if they could incorporate it into their overall guidelines, which that overarching, yeah. If you're comfortable with that, we could also continue to look for other guidance at other places and come back to you as a group and look at, together, look at what you're comfortable with.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the entire board, but myself, I'd rather put those guidelines in there now while we have traceries doing it.
Right.
We have something in there instead of waiting and then we don't necessarily get.
Fix it, don't repair it.
Yep.
Do it right now and get it.
Did we bring up the solar panel issues in these guidelines? I know we talked about the charging stations, but solar panels is the big
Yeah.
thing on the horizon.
Battery box.
Sustainability.
Battery boxes, all the equipment that goes to solar panels and
Yeah.
air conditioners. I know that's going to be a conundrum for, maybe that's a special thing over at Lake Ann. Sounds like.
And the solar panels should be in the last draft that you guys saw. So,
And we have mechanical language on mechanical equipment and things like that.
We do.
So it's there.
Checking view sheds and so forth. Okay, that's fine.
I mean, we're just getting garbage applications.
Yep.
Thank you. That's a good way to put it.
Said.
All right. Anything else on that, Jonathan? Okay.
Should we distribute the ACHP guidance to
That
everybody?
would be great.
Okay, yeah, why don't we do that? And if you all can take a look at it, as Jonathan said, we're anticipating getting our final revisions back to traceries the first week of March. I'm putting that as my deadline. So we'd like comment back in the next 2 weeks if you all have any additional thoughts or any comments on the ACHP guidance.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. I'm going to tackle new business first, if that's okay, Denise. Okay, so as I think some of you are aware, there was a notice of violation. It's been issued regarding 1102 Chainbridge Road. It's very early in the process. There's not really too much we can say very much right now. What I think we can say that's out there is that they have a right to appeal that notice of violation. Their appeal notice is due on February 15th, which is Saturday. So really they have to get something in by tomorrow. And that's where that stands right now. The county attorney's involved and the county's working on that. We have some other potential enforcement issues as well. And what I would say is whenever that comes up, if you could bring it to me and bring it to Denise, we can get it to the right people at the county who can then, start again that enforcement process and that review process to determine if we have a violation or not. What we don't want to do, especially with some of these notices of violations and issues, is it's still active and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so it just, I come from a legal background as a lawyer, and it's just not prudent, in my opinion, to comment on that too much until we get further down the road. And with that, I'm going to let Denise say anything she wants to add to that.
Anything to add?
Side.
The only thing that I would add is that they do have the right to appeal until February 15th. But they also, in order to clear the violation, they have 2 options. One is to go to fix the problems that we observed and we pointed out to them, or to come back to this body to get approval for what they have built. So those are their two
All the plans.
Correct.
that's where we are.
And you know what, I think it's probably also okay to say this is, I think from what we understand is there might be a little bit of a dual approach
Yes,
that they are taking, that they are considering their appellate rights and also considering coming back before us to get some sort of approval. So I think where that is right now.
we have laid out both scenarios to them and presented them with their options.
Would they come in for a workshop first? Joe?
I mean, I think as with Joe, with any application, or it's up to them what they decide to do.
Okay.
As with anything else. Any other new business?
I saw Mr. Burns is.
Mr. Burns?
I had sent an email to you and
Yes.
Denise
Yes.
and copied. most
I got it.
of it.
Yeah, I got it.
What, Mr. Chairman,
Mhm.
do you think is the appropriate thing to do? Is it appropriate to make a motion that the ARB ask the zoning administrator to investigate this?
I don't think that's necessary, because I think that I have spoken as the chairman with Denise. And so it is being passed on to the relevant folks at the county to determine if a violation has taken place, and then what enforcement action would be necessary if a violation has taken place.
Okay, so how is it recorded in the official record of actions of the ARB?
Well, it's on the recording right now, and I guess what we would say, I will certainly make a commitment as the chairman that if and when the county makes a decision one way or the other as to whether they think there's a violation or not, I will communicate that to you all. And then if we feel like we need to take some further action at that point, if either we agree or disagree or whatever it may be.
So did they just tear down a house in Holland Hills
Basically,
and got a permit from the county for demolition?
well, they got a permit to do the work that we approved.
Oh,
And then as part
We
of
approved demolition.
doing that, they tore down all the exterior fabric of the house.
there's nothing left.
And there's essentially nothing left. When the house is complete, the only historic features you will see is those brick courses of the chimney that project above the parapet. All of the rest of the exterior will be 100% new material. And so I don't think that that was the intention of the approval that we gave. I have more pictures than the one I shared,
Yeah, I understood.
and I'm
And-
able to share those with
Yeah, I guess the only,
zoning administrator.
this may not be a satisfying answer, but again, coming from that legal background, it's hard to assert a violation until the project is done and we see whether the completed project is in conformance with what we approved.
On this instance, I'm not complaining that they're not doing what we said. I'm complaining that they're demolishing the building as part of that.
Right.
And demolition is one of the specific things called out as cannot be done without prior approval.
Right.
We will absolutely investigate every part of that, John.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's my only intention is to
Yep.
get
And-
this moving.
And yeah, and I will make sure that I stay in touch with Denise about it. And if you have any other information, please bring it to me, and I will commit to you all that I will keep you updated. And if I think that we need to do anything, or if you as a board think we need to do anything, then we'll deal with that at the appropriate time.
Here, one last thing I want to say is that this is the most egregious thing that I have observed in the Holland Hills Historic Overlay District for approved projects. There have been any number of lesser infractions.
Sure.
And one of the things I think we need to get an understanding from the zoning administrator about is what is the threshold of causing a violation notice to be issued?
Yeah, and
Just how bad do things have to be before they'll step in?
yeah, I think this enforcement action that we're doing is new. And so I think, again, this might not be a satisfying answer, but I think we're figuring that out as it goes along is probably the best I can tell you. And I think, I think Holland Hills is particularly going to have to be sensitive because we get so many projects from there, and we are trying to maintain consistency with what we approve within those projects. And so we want to make sure that we treat both when we're approving those projects and when we're looking at those completed projects consistently.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
All I was gonna say, and Jason covered it mostly, is that when we were first dealing this with Daniel, we're just in very new territory. And I was wondering if maybe, and as you said, we're learning about it. Maybe that means that there needs to be changes in the future to our bylaws to allow us to make certain actions. But that was the problem even Gabrielle brought up. We don't have the resources to, check
them
for progress and things. So this was a kind of, we're almost in test case with the first one. And
Yeah, and I don't think that there's an effort by either myself or by Denise or anyone with county to be evasive. I think it's just, it's early and we don't know how it's going to play out, and we have to see where the process goes. Okay. That's all I had. Anything else? Yes, Ms. Murray.
This is gonna be my last meeting. I'm stepping down from the.
Are you serious,
What?
dude?
Yes, I've,
Oh.
it's enough.
What'd you say?
This was gonna be my last year, but I decided I really didn't want to stick out the next 10 months. So
I'm so sorry.
I miss you guys. You've kept me going on this I stayed on the commission for the last like 4 years to be with you guys. And it's now to the point where I've got to move on. So I will miss you.
now you're done with both of us, right?
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
can't keep you unless we can turn me into an engineer or something. But no. But anyway, thank you.
How many years total?
I was appointed in 1983.
That's good. Well, you did a hell of a run. Heck of a run.
Yes, I know.
That makes me the old guy.
Yeah, that makes John the old guy.
Well, Elise, we certainly can't thank you enough for all your service and your time, and
Right.
just thank you for everything. We'll certainly miss you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think when you get staff reports, you won't need people who have such long memories because you
Well,
sit out for.
I don't think that.
I don't know how we can replace that.
Yeah, that's right. Institutional knowledge is always valuable.
I won't be able to turn to you like, is that it?
Right.
I can't find it.
Oh, well.
What one day with no shocking news.
Well, at least thank you.
For 4 years to go by.
Okay. I feel bad asking for a motion to adjourn.
Well, I think Elise should have the honor.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Elise, would you like to move to adjourn?
We adjourn this meeting.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. Good to go. Go ahead.